Welcome to the American Made and Paid Show, the home of free speech and independent thought.
The big story is freedom of speech is really in trouble. The far left knows that at any time they can call for a sponsor boycott of anyone they despise.
It is right here, right now, where you'll get your weekly dose of unfiltered truth.
It's non-negotiable. Pre-existing conditions will be protected. This president has said this as a candidate.
Insight.
Very few people I know could have handled it. We can never, ever let this happen to another president again.
And information that challenges the American way of life.
Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. Happy 2020. The American Made and Paid Show is back after we did 110 episodes last year in 2019. And I know we kind of disappeared for a little while, and I apologize for that. But it's for a variety of different reasons. Now that the streaming thing is back, you guys can actually see my co-host's face for once. And it's nice to be able to talk. And before we dive into it a little bit further, the show is now, I want to always make some housewarming announcements. You know, the show is going to be weekly now, 3 hours, and it'll be live, broadcasted on this channel and the podcast channel. And then we're still obviously going to leave things up and running, on the other stuff. So I'm still going to like break this up and put little clips. But the show now, guys, will not be Monday to Friday like it was last year. I know for those of you who are tuning into it, but it'll be it'll be actually just on Thursdays for 3 hours if you want to watch it live. So do you want to introduce yourself? You're showing your face now to the internet. I mean, after 100 episodes, people were wondering what you look like, but now I guess everybody can see what you look like. And, just tell the audience, it's almost like a formal reintroduction after.
Yeah. Okay.
Now you got to tell people what you do and what you look like now, because now you're on video. So that's.
Hey. So long story short, I used to be an atheist. I was a hardcore atheist, and if it wasn't for you introduced me to Christ, and I thank you for that. So now everything I do is through a Christian lens. So I used to be a hardcore atheist, and everything I did was always from that perspective, whether it's from consulting or nursing or anything I did was always from an atheist perspective. But now, after talking to you, and then you read Romans to me, we went through that together, and that opened my eyes. It was just that mind-boggling. Like, it was just absolute truth. I'm thinking, oh, that's just insane. So anyway, so that's basically, a little bit about who I am. And because there's really not much else to say other than I'm a Christian dude. I'm a Christian, awesome. And everything I do is from that lens.
So it's funny because 2019, the podcast, for those of you who are watching, by the way, thanks for tuning in, guys. And Solo TV 84, thank you for your $10 donation. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know this is a bit of a different type of stream because I'm putting the podcast's inaugural episode on this channel just so people can see it. And then we're a little rusty, guys, so bear with us. I mean, when you come back after not having done the podcast in 3 months, it's a little bit nuts here, but this is going to be great because it gives you guys the opportunity to ask him questions. And if you guys have a lot of vehement disagreements about the podcast that we were doing, whether it was talking about street conservatism or women's suffrage or Christianity or socialism or whatnot, I mean, now is the time. Now you guys actually get to interact only during this live period, though, only during this 3 hour live period where you get to post your questions. We won't obviously get to everything, but we'll try to get to as many as you can because just like any other show, we obviously will talk for a little while and then you guys get to listen and actually see our faces. So there's always a different quality. I know a lot of people are used to the whole audio podcast type thing, but now it's like now you get to actually see us and you actually get to see how we talk and everything. And I'm not, I know you always claim that you have a face for radio, as they call it, but it's it's not that bad.
Hey, but it's true. I'm not a handsome man, so Either way, it's cool.
No, but it's all about the ideas. So why don't we revisit something about like a few topics that we covered last year for people who are new to this, and define what what we would call street conservatism, or conservatism from a constitutional standpoint that now is being lost in our current American culture, especially, with the unconstitutional impeachment of our president and that type of thing. I mean, is that tell us a little bit more about that, and then I'll obviously chime in. And again, just talk as you always do, ramble. That's all.
Yeah, no. Which is this is my point. Everything is so weird because now that I'm a Christian, I literally reevaluated everything I used to believe. And it confirms everything I believed in the past. Mm-hmm. For example, you just brought up the whole thing about street conservatism. And to me, street conservatism was always, just real life on the streets, like what was happening on the streets. So whether it's, I don't want to say gang culture, but let's say the underground economy. Mm-hmm. If we were making money, whether it's through, selling flesh to.
Oh, you can say it. You mean, because that's what you're.
I mean, but it's the truth. Like people don't understand what pimping is. So pimping, it's just a way to make money. You know what I mean? But how is it? What is it? Is it really about prostitution? Is it really about, selling things for sex? And it really isn't. It's when you get down to things like that, anything, whether it's selling drugs or doing a pop-up, that's a better example, I guess.
Yeah.
So things in the underground, it's all of that's unregulated, mm-hmm. with the exception of it being against the law. So you have to learn how to, market yourself. You have to learn about advertising. You have to learn basic math skills like an accountant. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're successful, you have nobody, like you don't share the wealth. Why? Because you did it yourself. You're the one that took the chances. You're the one that got the girls, or you're the one that, whatever it is, you are the person who did it. You are your own island. And, if you get caught, what happens? You break the law. That's the regulation right there. It's against the law. If you get caught, and that's what street conservatism pretty much was. It was,
oh, there you go. Now the baby.
I know.
Don't mind the baby, you guys.
It's the counselor's fault. I know she wants to be here, but that's the counselor's fault. But anyway, so I'm all like rambling because I see her coming and I'm thinking, get her.
A funny story that you used to talk about was like a good example of street conservatism is sovereignty, right? And that's actually something that's our constitutional rights. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about that because on my recent channel, and Tia, we'll get to your question later. We don't want to, we'll answer as many questions as we can throughout, but it's also good to actually have some.
I don't see any questions.
Huh?
I don't see any questions. What question are you talking about?
Look on the side. You'll see some questions come in from the stream. Oh, and if you don't, then.
You know what? Actually, I'm not. Like, I'm a guest.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Watch. I'm gonna watch. I'll show you.
Okay. Well, you'll be able to figure out. But what was that you mentioned about?
That was me just right now.
What's that?
That's what I can do. Did you see it on your screen?
Oh yeah. That's the private chat, but you can't see the actual chat, can you? Go up to comments. You see where it says comments? Sorry, guys, just bear with us.
No, I'm telling you, mine is totally different than yours. I'm pretty positive of it.
Okay. Well,
if
you want to view it while I'm doing this right now, and obviously this is all going to be recorded.
Okay, now I see it. Oh, fuck, I'm an idiot. Okay.
Don't worry about it. Anyways, but what you were explaining was something that we talked about a long time ago, which was basically this notion that of sovereignty, right? Which is like you don't get the government involved, you don't pay taxes and everything. And so if you grow up on the streets like you did, you are a conservative by default. because a lot of people have a bit of a conflated definition of what a conservative is. I mean, for us, in terms of our values, it's Christianity, but for yours, it was this aspect of sovereignty, and it was constitutional in its regard because you had the freedom to do everything as long as you were breaking the law, so you were technically in violation of certain people's rights. But it was basically this idea, well, you weren't dependent on anybody and you weren't depending on the government for handouts or anything
No. But here's why I have to correct you on that. Just because it was against the law doesn't mean I was violating other people's rights.
Oh, okay.
And so let me make this distinction. Street conservatism is identical to Christianity with the difference of believing in God. You don't need to believe in God to be a street conservative, but you do have to love yourself and you do have to love others. That's how it works. How do you think you get so many women to work for you? Seriously. It's not through sex. It's not lust. It's just, how do you get them? Because you're showing them love. You know what I mean? And in return, they work for you, whether it's promoting for a nightclub, whether it's promoting for, another business that you're doing, like a pop-up restaurant. But you got to show the people the respect and love that you show for yourself. And that's how it works. That's how the underground economy works. There's no such thing as the movies like, I'm old, so I'm going to say New Jack City, because that's the only movie I know that addressed those types of things when there was Nino Brown or whoever. So for, the young people listening, look up New Jack City. It's from I don't know what year, but that's not realistic because Nino Brown acted like a king. It would never work on the streets. You have to have love for other people. That's the key. It doesn't work unless there is love for yourself. That comes first. And the second thing is love for others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much how it works. I mean, there is no way or no other way around it. These women and men who worked for me, I didn't put a gun to their head. They bought into everything I was saying. That's all you need.
Mm-hmm.
Because I show them how to be independent, how to be sovereign, how to make their own, how to get their own thing. And I don't know if we remember this, but we talked about this before. When I broke it down to a street way, because I don't know the Bible like the way you do,
mm-hmm.
I kind of noticed that Jesus was actually a multi-level marketer. He was an LMM, but he was. But that's what street conservative is.
Now I'm more careful with how I define that when it comes to, giving the gospel to everybody else, which is, as Christians, something that we ought to do. But,
I'm not giving gospel
from a business sense, the fact that we arrived at that conclusion where sort of in the first century church, it was like a form of multi-level marketing, which was basically building relationships with people, I thought was relatively interesting, because prior to that, it wasn't the case. That wasn't something that was practiced. As a matter of fact, I think prior to that, people were more concerned over their differences, right? And where you came from than just giving somebody an idea. So yeah, but I remember
better. Hold on. Go into more detail. That went over my head. That did. You got to explain that in more detail. That went over my head.
Well, for example, I think prior to okay, so what I'm trying to say is this, right? Whenever a new country gets, I don't want to say westernized, but becomes a little bit more civil in terms of its acceptance of people, what are the first people that usually go into that country? It's usually missionaries, right? That's usually the first thing. That's how it was done with China, right? After Nixon went to China and opened up the gates, the first people that went in were missionaries, right? And you could actually make an argument that even though there were a lot of colonists that came to the United States and everything, I mean, one of the biggest things that people were actually advocating for, the whole reason why we have the separation of church and state is because, there were Christians that were whispering into the ears of our founding father to keep it that way. And that's a good thing, because with Christianity, it wasn't like Islam where you were forced into it, right? And it didn't know any race, color, or creed. It was just whoever wants to accept and, take the water of life, let them come freely. And that was the aspect of it. So how does this relate back to what I was saying was in the first century when Christianity spread, the aspect of national origin, race, or even border didn't really matter. It just mattered if you believed in what I was sharing with you. You see what I'm saying? Like, because prior to that, for tribal instances, like back in the day, you didn't associate with people who were outside of your country or tribe, let alone belief system, right? And if you did, it was because you were bartering. It was because you were trading. That's what I mean. I know that was kind of a long-winded, weird answer, but what I'm saying is like, it wasn't, you don't have to, it didn't really matter who you were. It just didn't matter. It was like racism was done at that point when that was introduced. Like the concept of national identity, even though it's important, something to hold on to, didn't really matter as long as you were part of the body of Christ. And that's why when it comes to an MLM, it's like, some of these people will pitch anybody. So that's
no, and I totally get that. But I'm laughing because I'm reading some of these comments.
Don't get too distracted.
No. But the comments are kind of saying what you're saying, right? But I'm laughing because here's where I disagree with you guys. And here's the thing. I am not scripturally sound, and everybody, and they say, and look, I admit it, I'm a new Christian, baby Christian, whatever you want to say. I'm new at this.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. And this is where a lot of people get stuck, because when people read the Bible, they read it and they jump around. They don't read it from beginning to end. They just don't.
And you don't have to, is also one thing that I will say. You don't have to go chronological. As a matter of fact, for a lot of people who are new Christians to this, I know we're kind of deviating, is that you don't have to start in Genesis and make your way through. You can start in Jesus's ministry. You can start in John. I mean, how it worked with you is, we went through the book of Romans, and Romans is so, because Paul was very educated and he also had divine inspiration of God and the Holy Ghost, that, it came together. And that's a really good way of breaking it down. Typically, whenever you hear a gospel presentation from somebody, that's where they'll usually go. They use the Romans tract, they use the John, because that comes from the New Testament, right? But that's a separate thing. I want to focus on constitutionalism. And I want to. Some of these comments are distracting me.
No, it's funny to me. But
yeah, and do the show like just the way it is without distraction.
But anyway, so I just want to make that clear. I'm not somebody who's
not a disclaimer, but announcement, guys. Like, so if Professor Drag happens to say something that may not be scripturally sound, I'll probably be here to reprove or just to guide it. But the whole concept here also is to just talk about constitutional sovereignty. I went on a podcast I think about a month ago, talking about men's rights, right? Just the
I saw that.
You might have seen that. And what I was just saying is that the problems that we have in America, yes, they may be because we've fallen away from Christianity, but it's also because of something that you've always talked about, which is people giving up their rights, people not knowing their constitutional rights.
Okay, but let me tie this in. I got to cut you off and let me tie this in, because here's the thing. And this is because I know most of your listeners are going to be white or Asian, whatever, but I know they're not black.
I don't know about that, but sure.
But I'm just making, because that's what I do. I stereotype. So anyway, I make educated guesses. Dave Chappelle said I make educated guesses based on stereotypes. So, but here's the thing about the Constitution. The Constitution, in my opinion, is a literal piece of Christianity. It wasn't based on the scripture. There's no place in the Bible that says, oh, here's the U.S. Constitution. But how do I know that the Constitution is a Christian document? Why? Because it literally says 3 things that you got to do. All the rules that Jesus says is love God, love yourself as you love God. That's one commandment. The other one, love your neighbors as you love yourself and love God, right? That's what the U.S. Constitution is. That U.S. Constitution literally allows for that. No other country on the planet allows for that. Not one. Because no, but I'm like, name the country. Anybody in the comments, name the country where the rights do not derive from the government. I don't care. Germany, England, any country, Australia, anywhere in South America, even in Italy, Rome, with the Catholics, even their rights come from the government. The United States is unique, that it is a Christian document. And then people will say, well, yeah, but guess what? Oh, no. There's freedom of religion. Why would Jesus be against it? He changed the Samaritan people. See, and that doesn't really get into how he changed the Samaritans either in the Bible.
No, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. The reason for why America exists the way it is with freedom of religion was because real Baptists, real people who were biblically sound, were running away from that as well. You have to understand that America was not just fighting for American independence from Great Britain. It was also a lot of people fleeing the Catholic Church. And that's something that people don't talk about, is that Baptists and Christians had a hand in actually saying that, you know what, when you are going to govern a whole people, you don't have to enforce that they believe in a national religion like Christianity, because you know what, that already happened in Europe. It's called the Roman Catholic Church. That's religion that was instituted also with law. So you had religion and you had the state, and they were administering all the laws, and that was a mistake. So you come to America and they tell the founders and say, hey, you know what? We're going to start churches. We'll have our neighborhood local churches. We're going to do our thing. You know, we will pay our taxes. We will do that. But if they want to accept religion freely, we will allow that. And that's amazing. And that's written into the Constitution, is that you can practice whatever religion you want. America became known. Our founders aren't Christian. I've already made that correction. They were Freemasons. But the body, in terms of like most of the American population, we don't have to go into like different denominations or whatever, are professed Christians, as you could say, for that very reason. It's for the reason because you have that First Amendment right of freedom of religion that's not found anywhere else, not even in Europe.
Yeah, but think about it. Now, this is where I'm going to disagree.
With what
part? How does Jesus change the Samaritans? How did he change them? Did he change them by chastising them or whatever like that? Or how did he change, homosexuals or anybody else? How did he change them? Did he change them by saying you have to be this religion? Or did he change them through examples? He literally showed them what to do. He explained why things were the way they were. And that's something that, like if we only stick with scripture, which is fine, you have to know scripture. You got to know your history, which is a big problem with blacks. We don't know our history. No, but it's the truth. How many blacks know their history? Seriously, when you go back and think about women's suffrage, what do people say? People say the same thing all the time. Oh, Susan B. Anthony, she saved all the people, whatever. But it's false. Black people believe that stuff. Why? Because they don't know their history. How many blacks know their history? Very few. Very few.
They know their history, but
no, they don't. All the blacks, they might say something like
they do, but it's not typically. Again, I'm generalizing here. Just the ones that are history, and the like black empowerment history, it's going to be a little bit skewed. But that's another train that we can go down.
No, but forget about skewed.
That was good.
Forget about skewed, because I honestly believe they know everybody. And this is Christians, atheists, it doesn't matter. Everybody views history through a progressive lens. Everybody. Mm-hmm. We believe in women's suffrage. We believe the 1964 Civil Rights Act is not a Jim Crow law. We believe that. Why? Because we see history, including Christianity, through a progressive lens. It's what we do. It's what every institution in this country sees everything that way. How many people can honestly say, if it wasn't for Christianity, blacks would still be slaves? I'm telling you now, no matter what you say, I will always know that this Constitution is exactly the blueprint of how Jesus did whatever he did to change the Samaritans. How did he do it? He wasn't like, he wasn't excluding anybody. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. He gave everybody all the freedoms of the world. Why? Because in Genesis, God gave it to us. It's in the very first page of the Bible. We were given everything. We were. Mm-hmm. He gave us everything, but we chose to have free will. And so what happened? Romans happened. Basically, so after when Adam and Eve did whatever they did in that garden, sinned or whatever, ate the apple, ate the pig.
Yeah, Professor Dreg still needs to brush up on his Bible, so you guys got to go on him. He's not scripturally sound yet, but we'll get him there.
No, but the thing is, but the mechanisms of how systems work doesn't change. Mm-hmm. The wording has changed, but the mechanisms of how things operate do not change.
Right.
So, and this is where, like, I might be scripturally sound, but you got to realize something. I was an atheist. Mm-hmm. Why did I not believe in God? Because the science didn't back it. The Bible, how it is read and interpreted by pastors and preachers and imams and the Jewish people with the curly, what they call them. I've heard, no, but it's the truth. I don't care who it is, whether it's a monk. The way they translate it does not relate to people today. It just doesn't.
It depends on who you talk to, because I will agree that a lot of churches and a lot of people who use the Bible to sell products or to promise healing and everything do just that, right? It's not really practical and relatable in a way where people will actually believe it. But you also have to understand that there are a lot of Christians out there, myself included for many years, who are out of touch with the word. And that's why it's very easy for you to hear a bunch of stuff and not make it feel like it's applicable to you. Hold on.
Okay, I'll give you a good example. No, I'll give you a really good example. Okay, so should women have the right to vote?
I said no.
According to the Bible, the answer is no. Should the woman be able to speak in a church?
The answer is no in the Bible. Actually.
Yeah, no, but it's not no in the Bible. According to Christian belief, like Jesus' philosophy, that's not true. Because where's church? Where's church? Is church always have to be inside a building? Or can you honestly have a church? What if you're broke and poor and you want to start a church in someone's backyard?
I'm glad you brought that up. And we don't have to go into it too deeply, but here's the deal. It's not an explicit no. It's should not usurp authority over a man and are not permitted to speak in the churches. Now, I believe that only, it doesn't mean they can't speak at all and they can't do any of that. That's in 1st or 2nd Timothy. But it's during the church when the preacher is preaching, like there are appropriate customs for how, it's not just women, it's just how people should behave in the church. You know, it's like the pastor's in charge, pastor's delivering a sermon. You know, obviously we wouldn't want to be heckling the preacher at every standpoint, but yeah, that's my little add-on there. And like I said, guys, you know, one thing that I want to mention, and this goes for the entire chat, is that most of the time Professor Dreg and I are usually just having a discussion when it comes to these podcasts. When people listen,
we're just talking.
Just get you guys to think a little critically, because here's the one thing that I will say that makes this show what it is that in a weird way anything goes. But I would like to encourage a lot of people to formulate their own conclusions and explain why. Like, for example, you know, there's a reason why we talk about constitutionalism and street conservatism with these conclusions that we've come with. And I don't really hear that term being thrown around. You don't necessarily have to talk about the same things that you've been taught. And there's enough political talk shows out there where I don't need to be the next one, just kind of repeating what's in the news and in Breitbart. I mean, we could talk about Epstein's suicide or supposed suicide. And again, that was kind of the last episode that we did.
I could talk about this all day. The whole Christianity thing.
A 3-hour show where I don't have to cut you off after 55 minutes and everything. So we could talk for 3 hours, do it once a week, and then people can tune in as they start to get in on the regular here. But yeah, I mean, that's something that I still, as a Christian, am still growing in. And I like what you said earlier about this, is that my politics now is just Christianity. I mean, that's my rock, right?
Yeah, no, but it's the truth. But man, because like we went into a tangent, but I'm gonna just bring this back because I'm gonna.
Good. Thanks for doing it. Because normally it's you that goes on the tangents, but now you're.
I know. I'm sorry, but I gotta say it. It's on my chest. No, but seriously, the reason why I believe women should be able to vote and everything else now is because our world is so perverse. Because the thing is like this, I honestly know progressive ideology literally comes from Charles Darwin, who was an atheist. But he wasn't just any ordinary atheist. He was an atheist who hated everybody who wasn't like him. And everything he did was to destroy that type of human being. Whether they were Asian, Australian, black, it doesn't matter. That is what Charles Darwin did. That's the beauty of his brilliance. He tricked everybody into believing it was real science, but it's not. Everything he did was a bunch of BS. So anyway.
Well, what did the atheist do? I mean, you're not an atheist anymore, but back then, what is because here's the thing. I mean, again, I'm not an apologist when it comes to Christianity. I don't really enter into debates with atheists just because it's pointless. You know, it's not. I'm not here to outsmart you. You do have to take it on faith. Do you think that it's mainly because this is what the conclusion a lot of Christian apologists?
No, the math and science backs the.
No, I know that, but here's the thing: most people, it's not about arguing that God doesn't exist, but you're choosing to reject God. You're choosing to actually reject science. Because when you talk,
I never read the Bible, so how would I know? Seriously, because that's the whole point. If you are indoctrinated in a progressive world, which we are, 2020, everything is done through a progressive lens. Even the way we worship through a progressive lens. I'll give you another example. We believe that it's wrong to tell people that sodomy is bad. We say that. Why can't we just tell people the truth and say, hey, look, stop doing this, stop doing that, because why? It's wrong. And I don't know if I should bring this up or not, but we could talk a little bit like I'll give you an example for yourself. You have like a porn addiction, right?
Well, now, I'm coming clean of it, but yeah, an addiction, I guess I could say that, yeah, without.
Yeah, but here's the thing. In order to, because we talked about that before, about how the success of AA. And I told you, in all the years I've been doing, anything in the psychiatric field, nothing has worked better than AA type groups. And I believe that the success really does come from the belief in God. But the other thing too is not just that it's anonymous, but because when it's anonymous, you could really get down and talk about the gritty. But that's the point. When you're talking about God, and once you accept God, you could honestly talk about the gritty that you can't talk about in a therapist room. Because when you're a therapist, you just can't tell somebody the truth because they'll get offended. And you have to tiptoe your way around it and sugarcoat everything. And that is, I don't want to say demonic, but that's just how the devil works when you sugarcoat everything. So it's acceptable. But now, if I was your therapist, but a Christian therapist, I would just tell you point blank, hey, look, porn is gay. You are engaging in sodomy or fantasizing about sodomy. But wait a minute, it's heterosexual porn. Heterosexual porn is still gay. You're watching naked men do stuff with a woman. And that's what porn is. And that's, if you don't put that in your head, hey, look, this is gay behavior. This is sodomy. This is, because I don't want to pick on gay people, but easy target because all gay sex is sodomy. And whereas heterosexual sex isn't all sodomy. It's some is clean, some is not. But the thing is, pornography allows you to accept sodomy way easier. Why?
That last point I can agree with. And that's why when people have a porn dependence, right, they seek out for more extreme things. Like, it's not
about it. Hold on, I'm going to cut you off. Go ahead. How many people will tell you, hey, that's gay? Because that's how you get it into someone's head. If you just say, like, the last point, that's not hard enough. Sodomy, because sodomy is just a word that nobody knows. Everybody knows the word gay. It has a negative connotation, just like the N-word. The N-word has a negative connotation. People know it. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Christians do not understand. I mean, I get the scripture part, but we are losing to progressives because everybody loves sugarcoating. Why is the Catholic faith? Why is that so popular? Because it's sugarcoated. It's not real Christianity. I mean, it is. I mean, I don't want to start judging.
I got the message. I got the message. So it's a clear-cut way of talking about the harm of it. But I do want to touch on that point where it's not, again, this is purely anecdotal, and I've got no real data to support this, but I would imagine we live in a day and age where just about any kind of data you could pull up, right? Correlation doesn't equal causation, but you'll find something. But from personal anecdotes, because I'm in a community and I'm obviously a member of a group of unspoken people out there that are deciding to turn their backs on porn. We know it's a sin. We know it's basically destroyed us when it comes to our personal lives. Like, okay, here's the thing. I'm going to make a real quick remark because I got to tell a little story.
Yeah,
it never got to the point, like I mentioned this in my video, but it never got to the point where it was disrupting me from doing my job. Like, I never stayed home. I didn't stay up late. It wasn't like that, but I knew that it was enough of a grievous thing that I was doing that it clearly had an effect on me, especially when you discover it very young, right? And that's like, dude, the fact that kids are finding it at 9 or 10 like freaks me out. Like, you guys are screwed up, all of us. But what I'm trying to say is, you crave for more extreme things, and porn has become more dirty and more filthy in the years to come. And unfortunately, it's not. It almost doesn't seem very proper to talk about porn in a church setting or whatnot, and I understand why. I really do. So we go.
You're not supposed to.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. But here, I can talk about it and address it and call it for what it is. But back to the whole, we don't have to keep harping on the sodomy train here. But it's like you do start to seek out more disgusting, filthy, crude things as a result, because you've become desensitized to it. And I would make the argument that the accessibility and the widespread sort of promotion, because here's the thing, people who are in the nofap community or decide to turn away from porn, they actually get boycotted. It's not uncommon. The guy who started that community is being sued by people who are in the porn industry. He probably got a subpoena from Vivid Entertainment or whatever, like, okay, you got to take this down because now we're losing money. But that's the thing, is that it's become accepted, and I feel like it's rationalized a lot of degenerate behavior that 20, 30 years ago would have been like, you wouldn't even, like 20, 30 years ago, calling somebody gay or whatnot was like the worst insult you could call something. I'm just going to remark that. And one thing I will say is that it wasn't even too long ago, like 15 years ago when I was in 4th or 5th grade, I would never call a gay person, I'm not going to say the F, the F.
Yeah. I got it.
But in 4th or 5th grade, kids were throwing that at each other like it was nothing. Like, anybody who was born in the mid-90s who went to public school in the United States knows that word was just thrown around like it was nobody's business. Like, kids were calling each other that on the field, during recess. Like, it was just like, all right, that's just the word that people threw around.
Well, so, okay, but here's the thing. On the streets
are now.
No, but see, on the streets, you hear the word C-word sucker a lot. Because why? That's it has a double meaning. It's not just like against gay people, but it's also like a feminine thing because that's what ladies do.
Yeah.
But either way, that's sodomy, whether it's oral or the other one. It doesn't matter. It's still bad. It's medically unhealthy. See, this is the thing. The reason why sodomy is bad for everybody listening, it's not because it's anti-gay. It's because it's anti-loving yourself. It doesn't matter if you engage in heterosexual sodomy or same-sex sodomy. It's medically unhealthy.
YouTube's going to demonetize this video from hearing these words, but it's okay. Keep talking. We're not using...
I have no idea about the rules, so I'm sorry about that. No, I'm used to the podcast. I don't... like, like, people trip out on this? This is like medical facts. This is like, I didn't... This is like, it
don't matter in this day and age anymore. I just saw a recent news article about a pedophile who claimed to be 8 years old, and he was claiming that was his...
Oh God, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you read that, right? And so that immediately made me think. I'm like, we live in a crazy clown world where everything is upside down, and it doesn't matter what kind of medical journal or who publishes what. I mean, when we talked about a lot of those health statistics, and I'd like to move on to some other things if that's okay.
We're moving on. I don't know how we got into the subject, but
what we're saying is that everything is being taught to us from a progressive lens is important for everyone that's listening here. That's the whole basis of our show, is like recognizing the progressive lens that's out there and understanding that that this is what's being done. I have recently obviously changed my stance on the character of Martin Luther King Jr. Once you find out,
we'll break that down too another time.
Yeah,
seriously, like maybe not now, but
no, not now. But
love to break that down for people.
The thing is that part of progressive culture also is that virtue of elevating civil rights heroes to the point where they're infallible, and we all know that MLK was a fornicating. We don't have to get into it,
but. No. Well, I'm going to let you finish on that one.
Well, what I'm saying is that's an example to everybody who's listening of how progressive history or progressivism has twisted our scope, of who we would call a righteous individual, God-fearing individual, when all the public evidence points otherwise. Like, there were FBI investigations done that were released. In America, actually, no, this is a fun fact, man. I only learned this from Arizona. Arizona refused to accept Martin Luther King Day as a holiday. It was the last state to accept that. And I don't know the full history behind it, but I just know when I heard the story behind that, it was hilarious because he got caught and he was exposed for all the deviant acts that he was participating in. And Arizona was really conservative at that time, didn't want anything to do with Martin Luther King. And so, but eventually
they were right for doing so.
Yeah,
they were. But they Public Enemy wrote a song about that back in the day. No, seriously, it was called something about Arizona.
Yes, I've heard that before. Public Enemy wrote a song about it. Now I know what you're talking about because I've heard the whole story, and it's like after you hear that and you realize it, you can't trust.
But it goes back to what I said. Black people don't know history. But it's not just blacks. I mean, every single person, Christians included, they only know history from a progressive point of view. See, and I think that's probably what kept me as an atheist for so long, is because I was always willing to accept Jesus. I just had no proof that he existed. Because, nobody could ever break it down the way you broke it down to me. Seriously.
Well, I didn't do it. God did that.
No. I mean, because that's a carnal thing. It's just no. Seriously, it was you. God didn't. God didn't talk to me. You spoke to me, and you literally showed me the book. Seriously. And if it wasn't for you, because I know a lot of pastors, I know a lot of people. I had Christians, parents, like real. I wasn't raised by my own parents. I had, my coach and his friend who later became his wife. They were the ones that were raising me, but even they couldn't break it down. Like, they never knew. Like, nobody ever really knew how you explained it, because for some reason you I don't really know how to explain it other than, yeah, you got a gift to communicate and whatever.
God works in me as an instrument, because I want to just say one more thing, but humans don't save anybody. It is God that saves.
Yeah, Jesus. Like, you gotta, like, without a doubt, Jesus is what. Just trust me. I know you know this, and for all the Christians out there, they know what I'm trying to say. But without Jesus, there's nothing. Like, there is no meaning to anything. Blah 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 blah. But at the same time, everybody is equally blessed, and that's what we seem not to know. Even if you don't believe in God, you're still blessed, and that's why. And we're going to tie this back to what I was saying at the beginning of what you were trying to talk about, the Constitution. I honestly believe the U.S. Constitution is a piece of Christian faith. It just is, just like what caused the slaves to be free. It wasn't progressive ideology that set the slaves free. It was the faith in Jesus and knowing his commandments. The Constitution is based on the commandments of Jesus. And so is the freedom of to free the slaves, the mechanisms that free the slaves. Because if we didn't love God, if we didn't love ourselves, and if we didn't love our neighbors, none of it would have happened. And that's something that everybody seems to forget, because we are so quick to condemn those who are different from us. The world's a freaking mess. I said freaking. No, but it's the truth, right? I mean, everybody should be able to agree that the world is a mess. Why? Because one, we don't love God the way we love we don't love ourselves the way we love God or whatever, and we don't love our neighbors. And that's the problem. And we want to be better than everybody else. So for every, gay person out there who's thinking I'm hating them, no. I'm just explaining my point of view. We could all get along. We could all be friends, da-da-da-da-da. But if you're doing something wrong, I'll tell you. And if I'm doing something wrong, I hope you tell me. Like, if I'm going to try to, put something in my pocket that shouldn't belong in my pocket, you should be, hey, look, Drake, take it out. And I'm like, okay. And I've always had that. I've always had people in my life to say, hey, look, don't go too far with this. And why? Because they were looking out for me. And if you're looking out for someone, that's an example of loving your neighbors or loving others. And that's something that this entire world literally lacks, because we look at everything from a progressive point of view. And the whole thing, and a lot of conservatives get this wrong too. And because this is not how it is in the streets. On the streets, it's not like dog eat dog world. No, you got to help the weak. The alpha person, alpha dog, alpha male. We said alpha dog, but I guess it's alpha male. The alpha male will always take care of the weakest person. That's a fact. That's always been that way. Alphas need to take care of the weak. That is how you survive on the streets, because you never know. That weak dude might just have a gun one day and shoot you in your back. So if you don't and the alpha knows this, they know the psychology of how things work. And if you don't have that mentality, then you are going to be screwed. But guess what? If you're a Christian, in theory, you know that already. Why? Because not only do you love yourself, but you also love your neighbors. So it's like, look, you know what? I'm going to help you out. Why? Just for now, I'm just going to help you because you need help. Take it. Not a big deal. And that's how it works. That's how Christianity works. And that's how the Constitution works. The Constitution is made so everybody has individual liberty. It doesn't come from the government, doesn't come from anything. But guess what? Once you achieve that, you also have the right to build a community.
Yeah.
And that's how Christianity spreads. And I know it's not literal multi-level marketing, but if you use those principles and apply it to economics, that's exactly how multi-level marketing works. Everybody helps each other out. And the person who started it tends to get the most benefits from it. Why? Because they're the first ones to do it.
I got to say that's true. I got to make a remark on that, because we think of, okay, so I know that the reason why MLMs sometimes fall apart is because the people that get recruited in it are recruited under false premises. That's the main thing, But here's the deal. You are right about the whole helping each other, because you basically have to clone yourself. That's what it's all about, is making another one of you to do the work, to spread the message and everything. Because that's all it is. It's like, well, the guy at the top is not more qualified than you. He's just brought more people the idea, the product, the message, or whatnot. But we don't have to make this all about MLMs. But that's a good observation. And sometimes I forget about that.
But it goes back to, like, one of the comments was like, "Oh, how come the Muslims and Christians are fighting?" One, that's not true. Muslims and Christians do not fight. Christians are getting slaughtered, and there's a big difference. But anyway, but like in China, no, like in Iran, I'll make Iran as a good example. Iran went from 100,000 Christians to now there's about 3 million Christians in Iran. And the reason why it spreads is because they do it by loving the other person. Seriously. When you are able to share what you have and help people love themselves, it just spreads and it grows. Christians are not at war with anybody. And when you talk about the Christian Crusades, because that's the go-to, the Crusades. Yeah, in a progressive world, that was Christians doing, but they weren't Christians. They were people who were taught wrong about Christianity. Mm-hmm. Because somehow, some way, Jesus changed the whole Samaritan people without killing anybody, without hurting anybody. He did it the same way they're changing people in Iran.
I like how you said that, because I observed that as well. And believe it or not, there was just a radical actually spread of Christianity that's come across, and people forget that countries, like, if you want to look at the first century, Iran, Lebanon, all those countries were the first Christian countries, because that's
but it's the truth. Yeah,
the truth. And Christians are not fighting, right? We have to understand who was in control when it came to the Crusades. It was, right, Catholic zealots or whatnot. But also, you're right. I like what you said about that, because it's not, Christians are not fighting; they're just being slaughtered by Muslims. They're not putting up a fight. It's and the thing is Jesus, our Lord, warned us about this. The persecution of the saints is going to be a real thing, and you will be hated for his name's sake. And that's the thing. And especially out in the Middle East, where it's a lot more incendiary over politics, economics, and even real estate. Arguably, real estate might be one of the biggest reasons. That's really the case there. So I like that. You said that. Actually, can you talk a little bit more about that, about Iran and about just the spread of it? Because
I go to the Middle East. It's been a while since I've been there, but because
tell us about your Middle East journey and your little what do they call them? Oh, you're muted. You just muted yourself. You got to unmute yourself. No, you're muted. You got a little mute. Well, what did you hit? You must have hit the button. Click on your screen and unmute yourself. Oh, your mic isn't connected. It says your mic is there. It is.
I'm back.
Cool.
Yeah, I have no idea what had happened. My mouth moved and it just went boop. And I'm thinking,
yeah, I thought the baby
curse word. Curse word. No. But that's my point. Because of the baby, I didn't need to travel. Mm-hmm. But because I need money, I'm going back in a couple of months.
Oh, all right.
So no, because I told we're building a house out here, and we just need money. So
guys, everybody listening, Professor Dreg lives out in the San Francisco Bay, in the heart of the Tenderloin. So if you want to see rampant progressivism, that's
I know, but it's the truth. I live right. Man, there was just like a shopkeeper. I'm not kidding you. A shopkeeper beat somebody who tried to rob her, and she might get in trouble. That's because she's defending herself. She's a middle-aged woman, a little bit older than me, and she was getting robbed. And but she went to town because she's like a leather maker. So she has some weapons, and she defended herself, and there was blood everywhere. I mean, I'm hoping they didn't, because I'm all anti-violence now. I don't believe in violence. I do not believe that's how you change minds, because like I used to be a fighter. I used to be, and I actually teach people how to fight and defend themselves when I go to the Middle East. We train people, and but now I don't believe in any of that anymore. because again, I'm not struck scripturally sound like other people, but I really do believe in a nonviolent way. MLK Jr. was saying that, but he didn't really believe it. Because I don't know if people knew, but they were stockpiling guns and weapons. And so he knew if that stuff failed, they were going to just start shooting everybody. But that's not, I honestly believe in the Christian way. I really do. And if they're going to kill me out there, whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not going to, I'll do my best to defend myself and try to get out of the situation. But I'm not going to try to hurt somebody. I'll disable them, hit them, make them hit the floor, whatever. But on that note, that I'm just going to walk away. Because there is no point in because if I hurt somebody, all that does is make them into a martyr, and it just makes them believe it that much more. It's just how it works. And that's just how it's always worked. But then with progressive ideology, we want to always live in fear. We fear each other.
Right.
I'm afraid of you. You're afraid of me. So therefore, we're going to stockpile our weapons and all this other stuff. But at the same time, people say, well, why do you believe in the Second Amendment? Because it shows strength. It deters people from walking all over you. That's why I train people to deter violence. But we use our faith in Jesus to convince and change their hearts and minds. But having, a little size, it kind of makes them listen a little bit better. Because, men respond to other men who aren't simps. You know what I mean? If you're a simp, no one's going to listen to you. Why would they listen to you? Because Jesus doesn't tell you to be a simp. They don't. You have to be, a man of a strong man of virtue, which is why, I understand, why people say, oh, don't let women vote. But yeah, it worked back then, but it doesn't work now. We have to let women vote. Why? Because it will show us who we are compatible with. Look at Kellyanne Conway and her husband. She is Trump's, I don't want to say right-hand woman, but
advisor. Yeah, she's pretty up there.
She's a top advisor of Trump. But yet her, I don't want to say it, but her husband is you know what I mean? That's the kind of stuff that will get you killed on the streets. A dude like that. Yeah. Are you kidding me? That's her husband. Are you going to tell me that she can't vote, but this can? That's insane. How? So, but the thing is like this. If you are a good, I'm not going to use that word good, but if you are honest to God Christian, you're going to put yourself with other people who are like you.
It's called fellowship. You're going to fellowship with the right individuals.
No, but it's the truth.
Equally yoked. Yeah. No, that I agree with.
Well, hold on. When I think of fellowship, I think of Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? So,
fellowship is a difficult term for getting together with people.
But that's my point. See, we look at everything from a progressive point of view, where I thought fellowship was just some. Go chasing the hobbit.
Or Tolkien happened to be a Christian. I don't know.
No, but that's my point. But it's still skewed. You know what I mean? So everything is progressively. Everything we do, it has a progressive slant. And this goes back to the Constitution and everything else. Did the Constitution say the IRS was totally legal? Seriously. And the answer is no. We had no IRS when the country was formed.
We had the IRS when FDR decided he needed the IRS.
Well, technically, it came in 1913 under Wilson.
But it did. It was established. But here's the deal. FDR used the IRS specifically to go after his political opponents. And then after that, they just started taxing black people like crazy. That's what ended up happening.
No, but seriously. And this is why we have to stop looking at it from a progressive point of view. If we really study history, we will see how Woodrow Wilson used the IRS. Well, it wasn't called the IRS, but he used the feds to tax blacks to fund things like food stamps, social services for, the veterans, to fund the KKK. He brought back the KKK and labor unions. He did that through taxation, federal taxes. that were not so, because in the old days it was just went to the military.
Oh, okay.
You know, little military, da 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 da. But when Wilson came about, he brought about a brand new. He even started the Federal Reserve. Why? Because black people had a lot of money, a lot. But we can get into that later. But,
yeah. Real quick. Hold that thought. I'm going to address a super chat real quick here. RJ says most libs will try to pervert and shame your belief in Jesus. That's true. That's typically what happens. It's not about. See, here's the thing to remark on that thought. I'm glad we get to interact with the audience a little bit here. The thing about deception, about the devil or the enemy, is that it's not blatant lies. It's truths that it's lies that sound true, you know, because with a lot of truth, there's always a lot of lies. I mean, there's always a little bit of truth mixed in there. That's what makes it believable. And, you know, if you tell the same lie 1,000 times, eventually somebody will believe it, you know, and that's just the nature of it. So it's true. It's true. And I think that's why I've told you that it's very important that as a Christian, we don't go off of how we feel or how we define Christianity, but what the Bible says. That's the final authority in faith and practice, and that's what we go off of. Just wanted to quickly address that. But yeah, we've talked about that last year with the American Made and Paid show. But I think one of these days we got to go into a segment where you talk about Black history as it was and not Black history as it is. Because, I mean, I get that we're not all for just talking about Blacks or Asians or whatnot, but you have to admit that the most polarizing and incendiary topics that happen today in America are usually over aspects of racism. You know, people will talk about slavery as if it just happened yesterday. And I think for a lot of people, they have a right to feel that way. But I just feel like it's misinformed. You know, it's through a progressive lens, as you said.
Well, I mean, so because I really want to talk about taxation, right?
Okay.
Because that's like, you know, and how, because a lot of people say this, oh, taxation is theft, but actually it's not. Taxation.
That's Turning Point USA. Turning Point USA says taxation is theft. Because like this one of the comments was talking about something, I don't know, like it's really hard to understand what this guy was trying to say. JR IDC, I don't know what that means. I don't care. Okay, too interesting that fear is a factor. You bring politics into it anyway. Hypocrite. Have fun with illusion. I don't know what illusion he's talking about, but it doesn't matter. Just, you know, it's. But what were you saying? But here's the thing. Taxation really is not theft. Why? Because we are taxed because we move away from the word of Jesus. Not so much the Old Testament, because the Old Testament has nothing to do with how this country is ran. Our country is ran through three basic principles. Explain why when you say taxation in that way, because you got to break it down further. I will. That's the thing, because it goes back into how I view everything now through a Christian lens now. And when I say Christian lens, I don't mean the scripture. I just mean through the 2 commandments that Jesus said: love yourself, love your neighbors. That's, love God and love your neighbor. Yeah, love God as you would, love yourself as you will love God, because the scripture better than me. So, but you know what I'm saying, right? So that's how everything is set. In the beginning of this country, we only had a very limited taxation for the military. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there was local taxes, for the sheriff or whoever, but they got a stipend. It wasn't like a real job. They did it for whatever, right? So it was real Christian based. That philosophy that Jesus had was how we ran this country from the beginning, all the way up until 1913. Mm-hmm. And in 1913, progressives used fear mongering to get everybody to literally vote for taxes. It wasn't, and that's the thing. People don't get it. The tax system we have in right now in 2020 came from 1913, when the progressives became in power. They stopped hiding in the shadows. In the old days, the only way you could hear progressive ideology was at Princeton. You had to go to Princeton in order to hear it.
You had to go to Harvard if you wanted to hear it. You had to go to Yale. Those are the only 3 universities preaching that stuff because, in theory, they're the best in sciences. Charles Darwin was their god. That was their creator. So, and we can't erase that part of history. That's legitimate. If you do a very good research on Woodrow Wilson, you'll see he was the president of Princeton. Why? Because he was the cheerleader of progressive ideology. With all this stuff about blacks being monkeys and all this other stuff, but it's the truth. That's what they believe. Like, I am not kidding you. I mean, I honestly don't know, because I know there's this way to put it up on there's a way to put it up.
You hit the share screen at the bottom.
Yeah, the share screen so everybody can see it. But yeah, I'm gonna have to, like, it's just too much of a mess. So I'm just gonna read it. This literally is from Charles Darwin, from that book, The Descent of Man. And this really is the basis behind the motivation of progressive ideology. And now this is Charles Darwin. At some future point, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. At the same time, the anthropomorphous apes, as Professor Shachar has remarked, will no doubt be exterminated. The break will then be rendered wider, for it will intervene between man in a more civilized state, as we may hope, that the Caucasian and some apes as low as the baboon, instead of at present between the Negro or Australian and the gorilla.
Well, that was terribly racist, but I guess it didn't.
No, but that's the motivation behind everything.
It's what came out of progressive institutions, mid 1800s till the early 20th century, and we've talked about. I mean, I did a whole segment on, Margaret Sanger and all these other Darwinian eugenicists that follow that, because eugenics follows the Darwinian method. It doesn't.
Well, that's the scientific motivation for race, for racism and everything else, and why racism is necessary. Because obviously the Bible's wrong, and therefore science says blacks and apes look so much alike, they'll be extinct at the same time. But here's how they packaged it. Okay, how did they sell it to the people? How did all of these people who were Christians, who believed in Jesus, who loved themselves and loved their neighbors, why did they fall for it? Seriously, why did these people fall for it? Well, because in the same book, this is what he also said. With savages, the weak in body or mind are soon eliminated. That's so true. But anyway, and those that survive commonly exhibit a vigorous state of health. Them Negroes, they know how to, we got to breed them together. They'll be super strong. We civilized men, on the other hand, do our utmost to check the process of elimination. We build asylums for the imbecile, the maimed, and the sick. We institute poor laws, and our medical men exert their utmost skill to save the life of everyone to the last moment. See how that sounds so Christian? That sounds like Christianity, doesn't it? Because that's what we were supposed to do. But the thing is, Christians used and believed stereotypes. Because why would, seriously, where in the wild do people just eliminate each other because they're weak? If you ever watch a pack of lions, a lion could have a broken back, and guess what? They don't kill that lion. That lion stays with the pride. They might move slower and, whatever, this and that, but they still let that poor little lion be part of the pack. Now, I know sharks eat each other inside the womb, but, we're talking about men. Do we honestly believe that's what happened with anybody who came from Adam and Eve's kids? Maybe in the caveman days, the 6-day type of human being, they were doing that crazy stuff, but not the generations of Adam and Eve. Everybody looked out for the weak. It was always that way. In the Bible, I'm pretty sure Jesus took care of the weak. All right. Isn't that his thing? And but somehow, some way, Darwin convinced everybody that black people, native people all around the world, whether they're Australian or Asian, because well, I don't want to get into that tangent because
I like that you're just taking literal quotes from Darwin's book, and then when you read it back with that lens, I mean, it's just crazy that the scientific community ate it up. But
that's my world. I literally come from the world of science and logic, and everybody believes that. But I'm thinking it's a ripoff of Christianity. Like, I swear to God, if you never, because like when I hear other people say it, but like I'm telling, Romans ties everything together, at least for me. But I'm telling you, when you see pastors and preachers, they do this thing like, I hate to beg on people, but like the Joel Osteens, right? He's so rich, but he doesn't help his neighbors. He doesn't help, he doesn't help the imbecile.
Because he's, televised his message. I know, I agree with you, by the way.
No, but do you see what I mean? Darwin was popular. Woodrow Wilson was popular. He made these laws, but by fear mongering, them crazy blacks. And we got a lot of them Chinese people down in California. So no, but it's the truth. It's
true.
Like, I'm going to get into a little bit of the law. Legally speaking, institutional racism only applies to Chinese and African Americans. Nobody else. Not the Japanese, not the Italians, not the whoever. Filipinos, Vietnamese, doesn't apply to them. Federal laws were never written to stop anybody except for them. And a lot of people say this, well, the Japanese were put in internment camps. Well, there was no law written. The president,
because of fear of Pearl Harbor. That's why. It wasn't because of
no, but it's not even that. The president of the United States acted wrongly, and the Supreme Court backed it because there were a bunch
they got reparations afterwards. That's what happened.
Yeah, well, see, but that's the point. So even though they acted illegally, there was no law written about that. So under war powers and stuff like that, a civilian person can do whatever, and he had absolute authority like a king, because people don't talk about this. But look, Abraham Lincoln, he was jailing people in the press. That's illegal, right? But he did it anyway. Why? Because he was at war. You can do things like that. When a president's at war, he has absolute power. And that's what happened to the Japanese. But when they left, they got 25 grand each, and they're all rich. And they're okay.
Those reparations, right?
Yeah, no, but that's the whole point. But going back to the taxation thing, taxation stems from fear. It is not theft. Taxation stems from fear that progressive ideology thrives on. It will not succeed unless there is fear. We have to fear each other.
Well, here's another thing too. Let me add on to that fear as an example. Global warming and climate change is a way to scare people into giving up the money to fund so-called environmental programs where the government just takes more money from you and doesn't do anything. Here's the thing. I don't want to get into the science, but all you have to do is visit newspapers from the past 20 to 30 years where so-called government geological scientists made claims that the Earth was going to end in 1980, in 1990, in 2000, in 2010, and yet we're still here.
No, but look, coming from that world, the only reason why I believe stuff like that, well, no, I never believed stuff like that. But the reason why I supported it, because, I was never like, I was always against global warming and stuff like that. But the reason why people believe it is because they're arrogant. We honestly believe we can control the sun or the ocean.
Control our atmosphere is the main thing. Pollution.
We can't do any of that. We can influence it a little bit, but that's it. Nothing else. We have very little control over nature. We just do. And for all those people who believe like, CO2.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we've talked about that extensively about, for a lot of people here, we're not going to get into the science of it because that's not something that this show is about. But all you have to do is understand what CO2 is when it is in a solid format, right? I mean, it's dry ice. So how can it be making the atmosphere hotter? Anyways, I don't want to get too far in that tirade, but let's talk a little bit more about progressive ideology. Dive into that more, because revisiting progressive ideology and where we are currently is always going to be important, because it's always going to be relevant. I mean, progressivism is rampant. It is all around us. The mainstreaming of a lot of degenerate behavior continues on. I mean, I feel like child drag is one of those biggest things where it's like, I know people now that actively homeschool our kids. I feel like in 10 years when I have kids, or however long, who knows how long it'll be, like, I used to think that, okay, well, maybe it would be all right to still send your kids to public schools. But I've been reading some recent stuff now where they're being taught progressive sex education at the age of 5 or 6.
Oh, and, that's so crazy. No,
yeah,
that's crazy. That's insane. I look, them kids barely know how to wipe their butts, and they're going to be taught about complex situations. Are you kidding me? That's insane. Gosh darn it, man. Like, that just makes me mad, because that's what pedophiles do. All of them people, they're perverted. There is no reason.
Here's the thing about progressives. Have you noticed that in the past year, they actually don't try to actively hide behind it? Cenk Uygur has been an advocate for like lowering. You told me this for low. Cenk Uygur. You guys, for those of you who don't know, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, and the Young Turks is a name that we should talk about too in a second. But Cenk Uygur, who I think was a congressional candidate for a little while. I don't know if he's still active or whatnot. But this guy has, on a repeated basis, advocated for the lowering of the legal age, right, to like 16 to 15 or something, and he doesn't try to hide it. And he said some outlandish thing, like I think he encountered some controversy recently for some past sexual remarks, but they don't even try to hide it. And this is Cenk Uygur. If Alex Jones were to say that, or if Trump were to say it, or any conservative, it's fine. But if it's a progressive, left-leaning person, I mean, like, the mainstreaming of pedophilia is rampant. And that's the thing, is like, where's the line? Where do you draw the line when it comes to these types of things? These are people who are educating our youth. These are people who are basically writing the curriculum in the school systems. And, like, I'll be honest, like, it's public schools now, like, other than the fact that you don't really learn anything, I just feel like I wouldn't be comfortable with that. You don't know any better. When you're 5 or 6 years old, you don't know any better. I can understand when you're like 13 and you're in like a biology class and you're like, I believe in creation, not evolution. Like, like, just kind of like irritating your teacher. I used to do that. But when you're 5 or 6, like, you don't know anything.
No, I'm going to tell you a true story. My boy, I can't say his name, but anyway, oh my God. So when I was coming up in the 6th grade, they showed like sex ed, like childbirth. My boy literally fainted. He just like, ooh, and just fell back. And like, when you told that, but it's the truth. Like, even in the 6th grade, like, it was gross. It's like, what the hell are you showing? But that's not for young kids. It's come on. It's just not for, that's no. It's so wrong. It's not even funny. There is no reason why that needs to be shown to anybody, because the schools, the teachers have no idea what is taught at home. So we don't know if one kid is ready to see something versus another, because one kid might be raised by medical doctors and they're all clinical, teaching anatomy, and other kids, they still might believe in Santa Claus.
Right.
So, come on, you're going to shock some kids for what? Because you want to show some oversized baby coming out of private areas. That's just, there is no reason for this. Like, what is the behavioral benefit for a kid to know about sex at such an early age?
Yeah,
seriously. I mean, does anybody have any idea? I want to hear it. I want to hear some comments. Why would there be any behavioral reason to teach kids about sex at such a young age? Seriously, what is the benefit? Seriously, I really want to know. No educator's ever been able to tell me that. I know guys like Dr. Oz or whoever might say something, but it's fake. There is no reason. It doesn't benefit anybody. If anything, it turns them off from medicine because, like, I don't want to do that for a living. That's gross. And that stuff is subconscious of seeing the blood or whatever. That's
really? That's an interesting thought. I mean, I don't know about that. I don't know.
No, if you're a kid like my boy who fainted, and they literally showed the child being born. That was part of our education in the 6th grade. Why would they show a woman giving birth to a bunch of 6th graders? It doesn't freak them out to say, oh, now I'm gay, I'm never going to have sex. That's not what happened. People still had sex. They still did whatever because it's the streets. But if somebody was inclined to become a medical doctor, seeing that, as gross as it was in the 6th grade mind, it stays with you as an adult. And you get freaked out over it. Oh, I'm squeamish of blood, or this.
I can definitely see that. But that's the thing, talking about just the introduction of it, like Cenk Uygur, like he doesn't hide it anymore. This guy, I'm not calling him a pedophile, okay? But he is advocating for some of these sort of more lenient laws when it comes to how we determine who is a consenting adult. I mean, this guy didn't even try to hide it. There's a hilarious clip on YouTube of his past or whatever. And even his co-host, Anna Kasparian's just sitting there like, wait, are you really saying this? And he's like, yeah, totally. Yeah. No. And that's how he talks, of course. But that's the thing. Interestingly enough, the name The Young Turks, fun fact for all of you who didn't look it up, that's directly derived from an event during the Armenian genocide, in which I think it was over 1.5 million Christians were massacred. Yeah.
No, but it's the truth. And that's why
genocide that history and a lot of progressives don't like to acknowledge. You'll talk about 6 million Jews, or supposedly 6 million Jews and whatnot. And hey, I got nothing, I'm not here denying no Holocaust or anything. But here's what I have a problem with this twisting of progressive history as well, is that genocide and all of that type of, hideous war atrocities were happening to all groups of people, but there's always one particular one that is emphasized above all else. And that's usually what I have a problem with, is because when people bring that up, they fail to mention the Armenian genocide. They fail to even recognize it. They fail to recognize the fact that 6 million Chinese were murdered at the hands of the Japanese during World War II. The Japanese were savage. And one thing that I tell people all the time is we think about how bad Mao was and Hitler and Stalin, but you forgot
they were bad. They were.
No, I know, but you forgot about the 4th dictator. You forgot about the Emperor of Japan.
Of course.
Influence from and Japan. I don't know why Hirohito was never punished for his war crimes, and that's why we have a history out in the Far East where, like, it's like. We talk about how bad Mao was, killing a lot of people during the Cultural Revolution and whatnot. But like, rape of Nanking and, colonization of some of the Western, I would say the Eastern shores of China by Japan in the early to mid 20th century, nobody talks about. And we're talking like you think Nazis are bad? Oh man, Japanese people don't like. I'm not condoning any of those acts, but Japanese people, like the Nazis they have their, their equivalent of their like high ranking officer, right? Like the Gestapo, and the Japanese had an equivalent of that. But anyways, I didn't mean to go on a rant, but all I'm saying is when we talk about these types of things, that's another example of progressive history twisting our lens, in that they don't talk about these things. You don't talk about Japan.
But you brought up a very good point. I don't want you to get off that point. I want to stay on it for a little bit because we got to add this. Seriously. Beyond the Japanese emperor not being...
Hey, I hear the counselor.
I know.
For everybody listening, the counselor is Professor Dregg's fiance, and that baby that sometimes you hear in the background is his child, just so you know.
Yeah, I got lucky. Well, So anyway, but I want to really make this point. because not only because the emperor was punished a little bit or whatever, like Japan, they were punished a little bit, you know what I mean, with we built a military base.
For his war crimes, though. I mean, his generals might have been punished, but
no, but we took over Japan, basically. You know, like we made Japan what it is today, basically. You know what I mean? Japan is like the Philippines. You know, I mean, people might not know, but it's just how it works. I mean, it's a good country. They're not going to act bad anymore. You know, kind of like Germany. You know, we changed Germany, we changed Italy. You know, we that's what we did. But progressives love to make you believe that the Muslim people are very, very good people. They're religious people. They're a peaceful country. But the bottom line is this. The Grand Mufti of Jerusalem was the advisor of Hitler. He was the one that told everybody, hey, do this, hey, do that, da-da-da-da-da. We got to kill those Jews. Like, did the Jews die? Did the 6 million people die? Yes or no? And the answer is yeah. I believe they did. There is no reason to doubt that. So what had happened? Why did it happen? Well, because the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, and this is something that a lot of blacks do believe. But again, it's always a twisted version of history through a progressive lens. The Jewish people were considered black or Asian. So Hitler used to, like, if you study German and understand German, you listen to what Hitler was saying. He never called the Jews that we all say, oh, the Jews died in the oven, right? He never called those people Jews. He used to just call them rats or bastards. He never even gave them a name. They were basically gypsies in Hitler's eyes. The Jewish people were considered the Orient. I mean, I hate to say this, but this is just real history. Hitler called the Jewish people Oriental Negroes, or the Negro Oriental. I'm not kidding you. Hitler called the Jewish people, the real Jews, the Negro Oriental. And those people escaped persecution. But the Jews that you see today, like in Israel, they were the ones that were slaughtered because according to the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, they weren't real Jews. They were just a bunch of people who went from town to town like gypsies, taking over this, taking over that, and not sharing with their neighbors, and that's why they killed them. So, you know, like when people say, oh, all these Jews, like, well, technically, and I agree with, like, I believe Hitler was right on that aspect, that the original Jewish people weren't the people that are living like what's that guy, the president, Benjamin Netanyahu. Look, according to the Bible, in Genesis, second chapter, it's happened around that place in Ethiopia. That's where the Garden of Eden, some river, Ethiopia, blah 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 blah.
Well, before we derail into that, I mean, I have to correct you on that, in that nobody really knows the location of that, and you have to think about the world that was made pre-flood and post-flood, right? Because, you know,
yeah,
it's different now. Geography has changed, but yeah, I will say but
here's the thing: science can actually prove where those locations were.
Oh, of course.
No, but that's why I know it. The region of where Egypt at, like Libya, Egypt, all of those areas still exist. So those people still, like the mummies and everything else, if you dig up those bones and the mummies and all this other stuff, they don't look like the people who live in like Benjamin Netanyahu. Like but like there was no mummy of people, and the bones, when they redo the bones, all of those people that they dug up did not look like Benjamin Netanyahu. They just didn't. They all look like the way Hitler described what a Negro Oriental would look like. Seriously, but that's what he called them. So the people who died look like Benjamin Netanyahu and not like an Oriental Negro, which is described in the Bible. And that's how the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who looks identical to Benjamin Netanyahu, No, but it's the truth. It's weird. Like when you really look at history and study it, the Grand Muftis are not Oriental Negroes. They're not. They are Aryans. They are considered the original Aryans. So when you look at the Muslims and you realize that every single Muslim Grand Mufti is white, like from Kentucky, white like a hillbilly, when you see that, you're like, wait a minute, I thought Muslims were black. No, that's just how the Muslims infiltrated and destroyed black people by taking them away from Christianity. Christianity has always been the foundation for every black person in this country. This is why we survived slavery and succeeded. But once you take Jesus out, boom, your life gets destroyed. But what did they replace it with?
Nation of Islam,
Yeah,
and
in the
Muhammad
prison.
Ali and Louis Farrakhan. That's what happened.
Malcolm X used to believe.
Malcolm X, exactly. This is why we have to talk about it, right?
Yeah, no, but it goes back to what I was talking about taxation and fear. Progressives cannot be successful unless there is something to fear. We have to fear somebody in order to succeed. The military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us against, why did he warn us against it? He was a true Christian man. He was. Eisenhower was a general who was also a Christian, and that's why he was like, you know what? These freeways are a good idea, so everybody can get around. I love myself, and I'm loving others. That's what Eisenhower did. You could look at it from that lens. His policies were dictated on loving himself and loving others. That's why he did the 1957 Civil Rights Act.
That's right. And we've talked
based on that. And that's why, like, everything I do, everything I see is always through that perspective. Obviously, loving God. I love God. You know what I mean? Because now I'm thankful. Seriously, like, I had no idea how blessed I was until I met the counselor. No, but seriously, no, but
her face on camera, which is unfortunate. But
yeah, no, but it's just because of lawsuits. We sue governments and stuff like that. So but it's the truth. So it's like so. And thank goodness I'm not the one that goes to court and speaks to the judges. So I just do the background stuff. But you know what I mean? So it's just for everybody's safety, whatever. It's just what we do. But anyway, so going back to this whole taxation thing, but that's the whole point. I believe that, oh God, because just like I wish I was more scripturally sound, because I honestly don't know anything about the New Testament because I'm still reading the Old. No, but I'm honest. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah. But I do understand the principles, the commandments of Jesus, because once you accept Jesus, right? Once you accept it, you got to understand the commandments. And then once you apply that to everything like magic works. Every single problem, boom, it's cured. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Going back to taxation.
Uh-huh.
The reason why there's taxation is based on that fear. And in 1913, that's when it officially happened. But we want to ignore 1913 because why? If we just say, oh, well, FDR did it for political purposes, like, no, it was done. Federal taxes were done to destroy Christianity. Why was it an anti-Christian thing? Progressive ideology, taxes. Why is that anti-Christian? Because that was the only way to destroy black people. Mm-hmm. Because Christianity was the only thing holding them together. In 1865, 1870, 1890, blacks used to be the Asians of 2020. Blacks used to be the Asian group. Like, they were the minority, but guess what? They were the top demographic in education and money and everything. What was it that made them successful? They believed in Jesus and their families were intact. And from there, they could do anything. Now, fast forward to 2020, let's look at Asians. Many Asians are more Christian than blacks. If you go to an Asian church, it's amazing how many Asian Christian churches there are in the Bay Area. How many black churches are there? They're all small, they're little. It may be like 12, 13 people, but Asian people have like pretty big churches. You'll see a couple hundred people in it. I don't go, but because I mean, I like music but anyway, it's neither here nor there. It's just a black thing. I don't know. But the counselor likes it. You know what I mean? I'm telling you, she gets down more than I do, which is amazing to me. But that said, but that's what Asians have. They have a faith in Christ that is not seen in the black community. And then on top of that, their families are together. And when you have that, you can do and have a very good education. And you don't have the same social pressures that you do when you're on the streets. Mm-hmm. See, now, when you're on the streets, you got the pressures to succeed, without family, without structure. So how do you do it? Well, usually you do it through making everybody feel good. Because when everybody feels good, they'll pay you for that. And that's how I lived my entire life, just feeling good. And people throw money at me because I can make them money, da-da-da-da-da. No, in theory, I used to believe like self-love was feeling good. Those are two very separate things. Feeling good has nothing to do with loving yourself. In fact, most of the time it's, counterproductive. Like when you're doing something that feels good, you're usually harming yourself. And I used to have a lot of women, and that's not good. It's not, because it's not just psychological, but it's kind of like a porn addiction, like dating a lot of women. It's addicting, but it's messes with your mind. You can't raise your kids properly. You can't hold on to your money the right way. I mean, you make money, but it goes out just like as fast as you make it, it goes. Yeah. But that's what happens when you don't have Jesus in your life, because it's extremely difficult to love yourself if you're always feeling good.
So I've got to add something about Black Christianity and stuff as well, because you're absolutely right about intact families and, more prosperous. You may not be like rich, but you have a degree of wealth, and I can prove this actually statistically, because, and this is from a personal anecdote, but it is true with what I mark. I have to be honest about this. I really do. I do a lot of sales, right? I do a lot of marketing and sales. That's my job. I give people this background. I've told you this story before, but I feel like it's necessary to mention.
I know. I love it.
I come across a Black married couple, and I mean married, not we're together and we got kids. I mean, they're married. They are legally married. They have children. They have wealth. They have a degree of wealth. They have no debt. They've got money saved up. They're ready to invest. They'll spend $5,000 on the phone. I'm like, all right, this is great. But every time I encounter, like, if it's like a single parent or if it's just a dude who's just trying to do stuff, they're always broke. And I don't want to say things like that to generalize, but from my data, there is something to be said about stable family, intact family, and building things together. That's an observation I've made, where it's like, I tell the guy who sets me calls, I'm like, hey, if it's, a Black person and they are married, ask them also if they're a Christian. And I'm guaranteeing you they have money. And I don't say that because I want to take their money, but they're in a position where they want to invest in something else, where they want to better their lives. And they're not impulsive about it. That's a key thing too. And so I just thought that was an interesting observation. It's like when you talk to hundreds of people on the phone, you start to notice patterns. Oh, you left. And
I'm listening.
That's the pattern I've realized, is that Black Christian. Everybody in the chat, let's just put us. I know I'm stereotyping here, but you know what? This is a good stereotype. We ought to embrace positive stereotypes. All I'm saying is, if you come across intact Black Christian families, all of them are well off. They're actually doing better than like conservative together white family. And it blows my mind, because I'm just like, what? And they're like, yeah, we're gospel. We believe in Christ. And I've been married to my lady for 25 years. We got 10 kids, and they're doing well. It's just like, wow. And this is just strictly from my experience, because I sell things to people. So I've noticed that, but if they're like single and they're on welfare and whatnot, and they got a broken family and you've got kids by like 4 different women, it's just like, when you mention that thing about how money just slips out of your hands, it's like that kind of that reminded me of those experiences that I've had. And this is from a business standpoint. This is not even, I'm not bringing politics or race or anything, but that's just what I've noticed.
No, but you got to be realistic when you're making sales. You don't, like, if you're promoting for a club or promoting like AT&T things, you're not going to go to a dude that's broke. You don't go, catfishing for off a person who has a bunch of kids and a ton of child support and you know what I mean?
Chatting. I'm gonna get water, but you keep chatting.
Yeah. No, but that's not that's not your target audience. And but I really do. I want to address this about the thing about autism and everything else. Because I got this funny feeling people are believing that I'm against all taxes. I believe taxes are necessary in order to take care of the weakest of the group. Because obviously, well, let me retract this. When you have some, because I know a lot of medical doctors disagree with what I say, but I honestly do not believe autism in itself is a disease. I believe autism is a symptom of a greater problem. So if you're autistic, there's different degrees. You might have some form of developmental disability or something else like that. But anyway, so long story short, I do believe in taxes, but not the way it's done today. And if it was up to me, I would never support any type of taxes. I believe things like taking care of children who are autistic or, developmentally disabled or mentally ill, orphans or whatever. I honestly believe that churches need to start taking care of those people. It doesn't matter who they are. They don't need to belong to that church, but they don't pay taxes at all. They're tax exempt. These mega churches, I'm glad that they make so much money, but I would love if they would use that money and take care of people who were not of the same faith or went to that church and just help them anyway. Mm-hmm. Because that's how you change societies, by doing that whole thing, loving yourself, loving others. Shit, you're blessed to have a mega church. Do some good. You could honestly end almost all problems by taking care of those who are the weakest of the group. Because the people who are middle class or the people who are, well off or whatever, they don't need help. They don't need charity. Why would, they don't need any of that stuff. Let them give freely to the churches and let the churches do their thing, because that's how it should be done. I don't care if it's education or whatever. The public needs to stop funding these things. They really do. Public education's a joke. I sent my kid to a private school. Why? Because not just because I was rich, because I knew she was going to get a good education. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's just how it works. I mean, where I had my house, most of the kids were idiots. I shouldn't say that. But the thing is like this. They weren't highly motivated parents to teach their kids. Because I know you're kind of against it a little bit, the tiger mom thing, but, when my kid graduated high school, she had 2 years of calculus under her belt. And if it was up to me, she probably, would have had 3 or 4 years worth of advanced math. But, she didn't want to do it. So I don't want to push her too hard. But on that note, public education's a joke. Paying tax for stuff like that for the public benefit is not the government's job. The government's job is just to regulate the military and handle our foreign affairs. That's basically it. We don't
make sure we're also not breaking the law, like taking each other's stuff and killing each other.
But that's not the feds. That's local cops. Those are local taxes.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? So we should have like one sheriff for each county and just handle it like that. Like, men should handle, I hate to say this because I don't want to sound sexist, but men should be able to handle their own affairs. I shouldn't need to call a cop. If someone's ripping me off, I should figure out how and who is ripping me off and then let me handle it. Why do I got to have some cop do it for me? They don't care what happens to me. So why would I care what, not that, why would I care? Because that's not Christian. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I should be able to handle my own affairs and get, retribution my own way. Without hurting anybody or anything like that. But you know what I mean? If it's some kid stealing from me, maybe I can help him out. Maybe we can make a deal and he'll work for me or something like that or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of things we can do. But since we took the church out of our communities, we don't have those options anymore. See, because back in the old Constitution days, That's what happened. Men handled things themselves. And that's just how it worked. The alpha males took care of everybody, the widows and people like that, even the single dads, because a lot of the women died during pregnancy, childbirth or whatever.
Yeah.
And the Christian dudes would support them single parents. You know what I mean? The single fathers.
Well, and that's a part of the function of a church too, is to take care of the widows, take care of the poor, that type of thing. And we talked a little bit about this as well. That was the original purposes of the church, right? Is not necessarily, it's not to institute. Well, we could talk about welfare all day, but go continue your point. I just wanted to add to that.
Yeah. No, but the thing is like this. I want to I am not a gangster. I don't believe in any of that crap. And I think being I stay that's for weak-minded people. but that's the thing. See, Jesus is like the anti-gangster dude. He just is. All he taught was loving yourself, love God, love yourself, and loving your neighbors, and try to bring everybody up. And if you can't bring everybody up, then what's the point? And that's why, I think Christianity is in a lot of trouble, because we don't understand that this U.S. Constitution really is a Christian document. It is based on those fundamentals. You cannot succeed without it. Slavery ended. We allow progressives to rewrite our history. And therefore we have stupid laws like taxation. We ask to be taxed. We literally ask to be taxed. And then idiot people say, oh, no, that's theft. No, it's not. If you honestly believe it's theft, you don't know your Christian philosophy. You don't know the scripture. I don't know the scripture, but I know the philosophy. You know what I mean? It's the truth. And it's not my job to know scripture. I'm not the pastor. I'm not the one converting people. So all I have to do is live, be an example, I guess. You know what I mean? Like just be a positive example of what Christianity can honestly do for you. Mm-hmm. And hopefully when I go to the Middle East, I could change some minds, get some policies done, and then people start looking at things through a Christian perspective. Because I really never understood it. You know what I mean? Like I never been to the Middle East understanding Christian philosophy. Mm-hmm. Never. But now that I do,
it's going to look a little bit different on your end and everything. And, that'll be interesting. I'm definitely, when are you going to the Middle East? When is that happening?
Jesus. I know exact day, but I'm debating if I should say it, but it's sometime in April. I'll put it to you like that.
Okay.
I guess when we don't do the show, you'll know where I'm at, because I don't want people trying to guess exactly where I'm going to be, because, crap, because some things we can't talk about, I guess.
Yeah, I know. So, guys, just to give you guys a little bit of info on my co-host here. For those of you who are new to the show, obviously we've actually done over 110 episodes. There's 110 episodes from 2019 that we've done, and we've talked about all these things. But for those of you who are new, my co-host here, who's not even using his real name, because everything
obviously
work that I don't think it's questioning. I mean, it's not illegal. It's just there's a nature of secrecy in your work, right? You do.
Because you got to have like I have minimal amounts of clearances or whatever. So I'm not a big deal or anything. I just don't want to lose my job. No, because it's it could happen. There we go. But you know what I mean? So because whenever I do anything, I get paid up front. So I already got paid, and I just don't want to jeopardize anything. No, because I told you we're trying to build a house and everything. I honestly, I was retired, but because it got more expensive than what I thought, I just had to take the job. I was like, we need 20 fat real quick, and just, because I'm not going to be gone that long. I'm just going to be gone for a couple of days.
Got it. Okay. What's another thing we can touch on? We got another hour here on the show, you guys. So
I wasn't done with the whole taxation thing. I don't want to move on yet. No, because I want
another hour. This is gonna be a 3-hour show. We're gonna do 3-hour shows on Thursdays. That's how it works now.
Yeah, no, because I really don't want to. Because I mean, no one's really talking about. I don't see the No one really cares about taxes.
Boring topics start to drop off after a while. That's what I was telling you. There's only so much you can do, but if you talk about something interesting, like Meghan Markle. Oh, I wanted to talk about Meghan Markle and Prince. Well, I don't know. Is that interesting to you? That's just more about how I think Prince Harry made a mistake dating a single mom. But
yeah, no, but yeah, the whole thing really is interesting. I mean, because again, like, I understand how it's not interesting because we're just celebrity worshiping and stuff like that. But the thing is, in theory, the king and queen were chosen by God, right? So
what?
That's what they believed. I mean, if you go to Thailand,
I think the UK is largely. Well, go ahead.
Well, okay, but like in the old days, way back in before the internet or whatever, but like 1700s, 1600s, 1500s, whatever. Everybody, it was said that God chose the kings and queens. Even Christians believe that. Oh, God chose them. And if you look at Thailand, they say the same thing. Oh, yeah, because God made them king, so they're blessed by God or whatever. So in theory, kings and queens are blessed by God, right? So, but it was interesting that he dated a single mom, right? Doesn't she have kids or no?
Yeah, she was divorced once, and I think had a kid from a previous.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know enough about that, but I heard that. So I was thinking, oh man, that's I thought that went up against their religion. Like,
well, I didn't know that you could just be a regular person and marry into the royal family. But again, I don't know much. I don't follow this type of stuff, but apparently, yeah, that's a thing. That's the idea here. I'm personally remarking more to the fact that Prince Harry wasn't really aware of a lot of those flags. It's kind of like this woman's been divorced once before. Feminist. Has a relationship with her father. It's like all the red flags that you would expect when it came to picking an ideal mate. And you have to understand they've only been married for like a year and a half, and now I think there's a reason why she's going to Canada, because the divorce laws in Canada overwhelmingly favor the woman, and if she divorces him, she basically gets to live a royal paycheck for the rest of her life. That I would imagine is pretty substantial. So.
Oh man, no, but God, that really just pisses me off. Because I know so many ladies that done this. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, ladies. Like I know so many ladies that literally they bank on divorce. Because like I am not sexist, but I'm going to sound sexist right now. But if you look at all the richest women in the United States,
yeah.
I could only think of two women who do not fit this stereotype.
Oprah.
And Martha Stewart. That's the other one.
Yeah. I actually can only think of three. Oprah, Martha Stewart, and J.K. Rowling. Those are the only three women that are...
No, but I'm talking about American women.
Oh, American women?
From England. No, but it's true. Like, but this is how bad it is in the United States, because there's a lot more self-made women in England than there are in the United States. In the United States, it is an industry to divorce your husband.
Yeah.
Because every woman gets their money or divorce. Everybody. What about J-Lo? You know what I mean? Who knows what she got from Mark Anthony? And I know counselors
because here's what people will typically bring up, like, oh, Madonna or J-Lo or whatnot, but they're not your typical, average American broads that are walking around. It's just, then they're not the exception. It's just, okay, yeah, I get it. But I know what you're saying, because I'm not saying this from the perspective of what I've seen with divorce, but just from knowing people who've gone through the marriage and family court system and that's an unfortunate thing, I mean, I believe in marriage. I believe in what it represents. I would want to get married, but it'd have to be to the right person, But I definitely know that with not Toronto, but Canada. my theory is the reason why I believe that they would go to Canada is because the marriage and family laws there absolutely tear men apart, even more so than here in the United States. I watched a Joe Rogan episode where he was talking about Dave Foley's divorce or something. It's like a 20-minute long rant about Dave Foley talking about his divorce, and it's just the craziest thing. And it's because he's Canadian that apparently if you can't make your child support and alimony payments, they put you in jail. I mean, I know that happens here, but like there it's even more severe from what I hear. Like you don't want to like get married and divorced in Canada. Like that apparently sucks.
Well, let me enlighten you a little bit. In California, you can be third striked for felony non-payment of child support.
Okay.
I am not kidding you. That's how bad it is in California. I literally saw this dude, and the courts were just bagging on him, saying all this crazy stuff. Oh, well, social services have to pay this and social services have to pay that. Can you pay child support? And the guy goes, no, I don't have a job. I'm trying to make ends meet. And the money I make, for my other job, like a part-time job, I don't have any money to pay child support. Mm-hmm. Then he goes, okay, I got no choice. Third strike, felony non-payment of non-payment of child support. I was like, it doesn't make any sense. You're literally yelling at this guy, telling him how he's a deadbeat and how society has to take care of his kid and all this other stuff. But yet you're going to send him to prison so we could take care of him too. It makes no sense. But no, sir, California is crazy. You can go to jail for life in California if it's a felony non-payment of child support. Yeah. And I don't know the specifics and what makes felony non-payment of child support. Like maybe if the kid was in a foster home or something like that on top of your child support, or not paying back Medi-Cal, because people don't get it. A lot of men in California have to pay back the government for anything that was spent on their kid. It's crazy. It's not like, because everybody goes, oh yeah, Medi-Cal. No. Medi-Cal is only free to women and their children, but on top of the government taking taxes, they also make the man pay in California. It might be rare, but it happens mostly to blacks, because I've never seen a white guy get convicted of this. I've seen one Mexican and mostly blacks. So blacks and Mexicans are the only ones I've seen get persecuted for non-payment of child support, where they went to prison. Like literal, not county jail, because you start off at the county jail, but if you continue not to pay, you miss payments, then it becomes a felony. First, it's a misdemeanor, and then it becomes a felony. And I'm thinking, this is so counterproductive. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. But again, what the hell? You know what I mean? What the government just makes no sense. But everybody believes in it, because why? They're afraid. They got all the, I need it, I can't support myself, and all this other stuff. And so it's an industry. A lot of women, like I said, I stand by this. I know. Well, think about it. You hate to say this, but look at Oakland is a perfect example.
Oh yeah, I lived there for 6 years. I know it.
No, but did you hear about McCarthy Boulevard? Those two broads literally went into some dude's house, took it over, and now they live there. Seriously, they pay no rent. They're not going to move out. They went to court. The guy got a legal eviction, and because he bought the house, it was a junker. Yeah, and he wanted to, flip it a little. You know how they do house flipping. Yeah,
of course.
So these two women literally occupied that house, and the guy goes, "Look, I will pay for 2 months of your living expenses to move out," and they still said no, even though the court already kicked them out.
Just go into this guy's house and decide that they want to squat and live there.
But that's the point. It's an industry. This whole the Bay Area is. I'm surprised Meghan Markle didn't move to the Bay Area, because she probably would have ended up very well there too. But I believe it's because also the media is not as bad in Canada as it is in California. Like if she lived in the Bay, it'd be nonstop paparazzi all over the place. But on that note, going back to that thing in Oakland, That's what women do in Oakland. You hate to say it, but because they're black, but you know what I'm saying? Because it makes me mad. I'm thinking, man, you ignorant, blah, 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 blah. Like, seriously. Like, because I was going to go into a quote, but since I don't have it up on the screen, I won't do it. But the, I got to get the hang of it. But anyway, the government allows these people to make money off of other people's successes. That's a real industry.
Yeah, leeching, right?
Yeah, well, I don't. It's worse than, like, at least the leech has something to offer. These two broads didn't even, I don't want to say, something bad, but you know what I'm saying.
Listen, like, I need to understand this. Explain it to me. How can you just break into somebody's house and just?
You can't. It's against the law. Like, why
are they getting away with it, though? That's my question.
Because the mayor said, hey, look, told the police, don't arrest him.
Why?
And the mayor can do that. The mayor tells the police what to do. The police take orders from the police chief, who takes orders from the mayor or the city attorney.
Sure.
And that's how it works. I believe this was, I don't have any proof, but there is no way the sheriff of Alameda County didn't go, because usually the sheriff will do this.
Yeah.
But there is no way the sheriff wouldn't evict these two women. They don't need, the guy didn't have to give him any money. He already won it in court. He has a court order for these women to leave. But it has to be an orchestrated.
Right, but why, if I were in his shoes, I would basically just grab him by I don't want to say grab him by the hair, just throw him out on the street. But I'm serious. Like, here's the thing, I would be that angry. I would be that frustrated. Like, you got to get out of my house. Like, how can you be here? I would just come back with a gun and just, like, that's.
Well, this is what I told the counselor.
Because, like, what's the guy doing then? He just goes to work 9 to 5, and these women just, like, live in his house. I mean, I know about cooperative housing. It's easy to scam people over cooperative housing. That's a real thing in the Bay Area because it's so expensive. But, like, this guy could come back with, like, a Glock.
Okay, so no, but because a lot of people are confused. So let me explain this. This is how it happened. There was a house that nobody was living in. It looked abandoned, right?
Oh, okay.
So a guy who doesn't want to be identified in the media bought that house so he can, do his, live in there, fix it up, and sell it to somebody else, or maybe move in himself. But the way the media says, oh, he's a developer. Like this man, but he's not. Developers don't buy broken down homes, right? That's not what developers do. Developers buy a lot of land, like an acre, 3 acres, 5 acres, and build tons of units. Mm-hmm. They're not going to build 1 unit. They're going to build 20, 30 units. And if they have more land, they'll build 100, 150, whatever. So these two black women said, hey, look, what if we move in here, call the media, and make a big stink about we need more public housing and all this other stuff. And it was, I can't prove it, but I've been around long enough and, with the legal system, and I know how things work. And that's what happened, because there is no way the sheriff is not going to listen to what the judge says. The guy went to court, did everything right. He goes, look, I got to make this. I own the house. I have to make it livable because, look, if you're here, there's all these liability, which is true. There's a lot of liability when you own land. So he's trying to do the right thing, make it, and he could sell it. And he even said, I'll sell it to a nonprofit. I think that was his intent, to sell it to a nonprofit at below market rate, but he wanted to make money with that, right? But no, not these. I can't say, gosh darn it. No, because I want to say, certain words, but, I can't. But that's just, but it's not that, because I know a lot of people that say, oh, why do you use those words? Because like everybody says the N word. It's not like, it's not a racist term. It's just
you can, because you're black, but
but even like, you just don't want to do that. But these two ladies, it's insane that they honestly believe they should live in a house for free because housing is a public right. It's not a public right. It's not a civil right. Nobody has a right to own a house.
Well, you don't have a right to food, so I don't even know what right.
Yeah, you don't have a right to anything. That's the point. See, and then a lot of atheists will say this. Oh, now you're being hypocritical. See, this is where everybody says, "Oh, you're hypocritical now." But no. If you honestly understand Christianity, you always know you gotta love God, love yourself, and then love others. So taking things for free is not how you love yourself. That's how you feel good. Seriously, because when you take something that isn't yours and it's free, what's stopping the other guy from taking it because it's also free? I used to work with some dude from some African country, I like Nigeria, Somalia, I don't know. But he was an immigrant or something like that. And he was telling me, he was breaking it down. It was like, yeah, man, like over there in Nigeria, it's this is when there was like a lot of no, not it's Somalia. He was Somali. No, not Somalia. Gosh darn it, I always forget. Nigeria. He was from Nigeria.
Okay.
So when oh God, no, because Africa has gone through so many problems, like so many dictators and stuff like that. But when I think it was Cameroon. I don't know. It was when they had those bad when they were killing all those people and whatever. But because it wasn't Darfur, not like that, because that's in Sudan. God, there was so many atrocities in Africa. It's not even funny. But he was one of those refugees. He, got a job as a nurse or whatever. It's a cool dude. But he told me, like, man, it's so crazy. People don't understand what it's like over there. He goes, when you see somebody with Nike shoes, that guy stole it. And he goes, and if you want them, because they, you got to steal it from that guy. You got to kill him.
Steal it.
Yeah, you got to kill him to get those shoes. And I said, do you ever do that? And he goes, no, because I don't want somebody killing me over some shoes.
Yeah,
but what happens?
Yeah,
but you see how that's anti-Christian, taking stuff for free.
Well, stealing is
no. Forget about the killing. Just taking things that are free. Well, that is anti-Christian, because people should not take things that are free. Jesus doesn't say loving yourself is getting free stuff. That's not how it works, because when you take things that are free, it usually takes force. What is free? Everything has a cost. Everything has a price.
Right.
So these ladies are using force to take somebody else's house. What is that teaching other people? Take things by force.
This is unbelievable.
That is anti-Christian.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I gotta chime in with my thoughts. This is unbelievable that something like this could continue to happen. But now that you've explained it about how this guy was buying a house, he wasn't residing in it, so I can see how that would be different. But it was, the funny thing is, you see a lot of those fixer uppers and those beaters out in Oakland,
yeah,
and people squat and live in these houses, all kinds of conditions. They're not even cleared for being able to live.
Uninhabitable.
Remember the ghost ship fire that happened in Oakland like a few years back? That was because a bunch of people were squatting in a warehouse. There had aspects of the warehouse that were sectioned off just for people to squat and put a bed in. And I feel bad because the place burned to the ground. It wasn't fired or whatnot, because it was a warehouse. It was like a storage center.
Well, did you see the RVs in there? They literally had RVs in the ghost house.
Where it was just like they were just subleasing those units to like broke artists and college kids. I know because I went to a concert there once back in my college days, and that place is rickety. But that's how Oakland is. Like, I mean, for a lot of you people who don't know, I lived in Oakland for 6 years, and you're in San Francisco, so
yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, that's the real thing. People don't have their own place. They they're either they bunk in with 5 other people, or they just have like a hammy setup. I mean, these people are living in warehouses, and the only thing that's separating you from your roommate is like a little curtain that you set up to just divide the space. That's just how it is.
No, but I like that one. Sounds like Detroit. Yeah, it's exactly like Detroit. And because I don't want to sound like a broken record, but that's the power of Christianity. It really is. People don't understand what these women do. That's the progressive goal. It is to be anti-Christian. And these black women bought it hook, line, and sinker, because in the 1800s, no black woman would have ever done that. Ever. Never, ever, ever, ever. And I'm gonna read it because there's this quote from Madam C.J. Walker, which is really good. And I will post it up. Yeah, I mean, you might be able to post this because you're probably faster than me, but just look her up. Madam C.J. Walker, Sarah Breedlove, she spoke at the National Negro Business League Convention way back in 1912. And this is what she said. I'm not kidding you. She said this, and this would like blow the minds of any black woman listening to this today. She is the very first self-made millionaire in the United States, was this lady. And she wasn't even the richest black woman of her time, but she was the first to become a millionaire. This is what she said. I am a woman who came from the cotton fields of the South. From there, I was promoted to the wash tub. From there, I was promoted to the cook kitchen. And from there, I promoted myself into the business of manufacturing hair goods and preparations.
Mm-hmm.
I have built my own factory on my own ground. That's what she said. Can you imagine that? Imagine what blacks used to be like with the Christian philosophy.
Pre-progressivism, with Christianity.
Progressive ideology really teaches you. It, and we went back with Darwin and all this other stuff, but that's the difference. This thing in Oakland, it pisses me off because not just because I'm black, but I know how it used to be like. You know what I mean? And it's like, and it just makes me mad. And oh man, like this.
And one of these days, we got to really go into the history of it. And I did a whole segment just talking about how Reconstruction was the best time to be black. I mean, you had Texas A&M. It's like that forgotten part of American history. Well, hey, surprise, you actually had black politicians that serve in state senates and even in Congress that kind of have gone forgotten, right? You had black businesses. You had black banks.
But the funny thing is, I'm not kidding you. It was a black women. What happened to, women's suffrage? Oh, women couldn't vote. Women didn't drive. Women couldn't do all this BS. It's all a lie. Everything from a progressive ideology is a lie. Because I haven't gotten to this part on the Bible, but I'm looking forward to it, about how the devil lies and cheats people and stuff like that. They do. Well, I mean, but I wanted to see like the real good stuff, like how because dude, like this is what the devil does. He makes everything look like it's good. I take this house. It's there. It's abandoned. You can make it your own. This guy's not doing something. And oh God, you know what these two chicks did? These broads, man, it's incredible. You know what they did? I don't know how they did it, but I honestly believe the mayor's behind this, but somehow, some way, the guy is going to sell this house to a nonprofit who's going to subsidize their mortgage for them. That's scary. Because, one, that means the government can force you out of your house, even if the judge says it's your house. Because they'll say, no, think about this. The guy,
it's his property. He owns it.
No, but the judge, but here, look at it now from the government perspective. The judge already gave them an eviction notice. Think about that. The dude did everything right. When you evict somebody, you just can't give them a 30-day notice or a 60-day notice and say, hey, you got to go. You got to do the 60-day notice. He did all that. He gave them a 30-day notice because they're squatters. They were only there for a month. And then after the 30 days, they didn't want to leave. So then after the 30 days expires, you go to court and then you get an eviction notice from a judge. Now the government is involved. The judge already ruled that what these women were doing were illegal and the government wants them out. Because that's what the judge says. The judge represents the people as well as the landlord, the property owner. But the mayor somehow, some way tells the police who's supposed to enforce the judgments because that's the sheriff's job. The sheriff is literally supposed to take these women out because they have a court order to do so.
Right.
But guess what? The mayor goes, nope, I don't want that. I'm gonna tell these cops not to do it. Do not enforce the judgment because, we have oversight over the judges. And that's not right. But somehow, some way they did that. And I'm telling you, this is how the devil wins. This is what Satanism looks like. Because a lot of people don't talk about things like this because when they talk about Satanism, they talk about brimstone and fire pits and scary things. But that's not how it really works, because anything anti-Christian obviously is from the devil. This is what the devil's playground looks like. It's pretty nice. I got a free house.
No.
Somebody subsidize it.
And I'll agree with you on that. I think that's just some of the major issues that we deal with. It's a lot of it is based off of deceit. But I think getting people to become more aware of progressive ideology, right, especially how it manifests in this type of injustice, is important, because it almost feels like it's just constitutionally unsound, and that's the crazy thing is, remember a long time ago when it came to the law, the way you would define two things is as people and property. Well, more and more, that's how people rationalize this type of behavior. And that's how we rationalize even for the killing of babies. Really, when it comes down to it, I heard that once, where the only two terms that are like universal in law, because everything else you have to define, is person and property. But this is a unique situation where it's kind of like it doesn't matter anymore, and that's why people can justify it. People can justify killing babies. People can justify evicting people from their own houses, and it's nuts, right? And the progressive agenda, here's the big thing that we didn't even talk about in the 2 hours that we've been talking, that we brought up many, many months ago. What does it all come down to? The manipulation of language. That's really what it is, because people are educated through words, through knowledge, and through the languages, right? But understand that a very, very basic component of progressivism is just the lie manifested in confusing words, right? And like, for example, not confusing, but words that don't really mean what it is. Planned Parenthood is the perfect example. Are they really planning all of these young women for parenthood? No, quite the opposite. They're actually killing your babies and harvesting the placenta for stem cell research and doing other God knows, evil things. And that's the thing, is that's the irony of it. That's the irony of reproductive rights. It's not. How can you call it reproductive rights when the thing that you're advocating for is the antithesis of reproduction? But see, you notice how the American public takes that at face value and goes, oh yeah, reproductive rights. But a lot of times, for people who have common sense, when you really ask them these questions, they'll go, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. And then and that's what they don't want you to. They don't want you to stop and ask a question and go, hold on a second. Why is it called this? Why is it this? See, people are given the how and the what, but you don't have to give them the why, which means you don't have to give them the rationale behind it. But if you give them the how and the what, sometimes that's enough to push something that's believable, onto people, believable, whatever that means. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, the language has always been important. The language is so crucial to how we define our rights. Because think about law, for example. I mean, you have experience in law. A criminal, a crook who breaks into somebody's house could win a lawsuit amongst somebody who he broke into just because of how things are defined, how we define person and property, how we define laws.
Yeah, no, but
and people give up their rights because they don't know any better.
But see, but that's the beauty of it. That's why, when I look at MLK Jr., do I really fault him because he didn't understand the language? Well, yeah, I fault him. Why? Because I'll tell you why. Because he had access to, and I know you're aware. Well, I don't know. I'm like almost like 99% positive this. There is a huge difference from that new whatever Bible and the King James Bible.
Oh, new international version, non-inspired version.
Yeah, the NIV one. That's dude, it's a huge difference. So I'm pretty sure Martin Luther King had the but that's another way of attacking things. Change the language. If you change the language of the Bible, come on, how does anybody know if they're using that NIV Bible? That's insane. But you're exactly right. It's all about the language. No one's ever read these laws in 1960s. They never did.
It's funny how when you told me that there was a night, and here's the thing for everybody who's listening too, people are all like 1964 Civil Rights Act. 1964 Civil Rights Act, whether it's Title VII or Title IX, is the reason for discrimination-based lawsuits that happen in America today because of how you define a protected class. That is it, is right there in the 64 Civil Rights Act. And it's funny because a lot of people thought, well, that's when blacks could vote. That's when blacks could do this. You're given rights. It was the desegregation. Nah, it happened in 57. And it was funny how we pulled up a copy. Yeah, we actually read the law, which was weird. It's just this long document. And you read the 1957 Civil Rights Act and you compare it up to the 1964 Civil Rights Act and you go, yeah, the American public were conned. You know when LBJ said, I'll have those,
Negroes.
Yeah, voted Democrat for the next 200 years. He did it through the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And you know what? We're almost, 80, 60 years on, and he's not wrong. People overwhelmingly support the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It's in every government agency, and it's in every workplace and academic institution in the United States. Title VII pertains to the workplace and Title IX pertains to the academic institution. And it's crazy. But you see, people who don't read the laws, and I didn't know this until you showed me, don't know the difference. You didn't need a 1964 Civil Rights Act. You already had one.
See, but that's why
people were buying property in Harlem in the 20s before people thought that was even possible.
Yeah, no, but because we don't have it up, like that's something I wish I could put up on the share screen so the viewers can see this. But all they have to do, if they really want to see it, just look up this number, Public Law 88-352 and Public Law 85-315, and you can see it for yourself.
And here's the thing. I know progressives like to cry discrimination and institutionalized racism. Really, the only way to prove institutionalized racism is through the laws. And that's what you taught me with the case laws. When you actually read them, you have to read about what laws were being written then. But that's the thing, is your history books are not going to teach you that. And nobody's going to go bother pulling out all these dockets and going, hey, what was the law in 1950? And sure enough, you read the 57 law and it's like, education, literacy tests, and busing. The thing that Joe Biden was attacked on. And it's crazy.
But you want to know what else it did? Like that happens like for today. In 2020, we would love a voucher system. But the Civil Rights Act prevents that from happening. It will never, they're trying, but it'll never do because everyone's going to sue because the 64 Civil Rights Act and all these, black people are saying, oh, yeah.
But here's the thing. They needed to make the 1964 Civil Rights Act a thing to protect it from to continue its existence. Like you could never really veto that. You can't really, because of how it defines, the laws and what, some of the clauses within there, you can't really, like, here's the thing, not being able to sue on the basis of sex, national origin, and all of those things basically makes it so that anybody can claim discrimination or harassment at any time.
Yeah, well, because it's not that difficult, but what you have to do, honest to God, is find a lawyer who's not afraid to set precedents, because you really have to. And this is why I'm so glad I'm a Christian now, because I can see things way clearer. But you really have to show judges with real facts, with real like evidence. You just can't just be talking about your feelings, because that's, the reason why so many Christians fail and so many institutions that are conservative are failing is because we fall into the emotional trap. We don't come forth with real hard evidence. And blacks are very good at not coming up with real hard facts or evidence. Like those two ladies, they lost because why? They had no facts. They were just based on emotion. Oh, I feel I owed a house. There's discrimination happening all the time. Where's the proof? Where is it all? And even though it is, but they have never proven it. Like if they would say, hey, look, at this school, we are taught about sex when we were 5. That's not going to help me add 2 + 2. Shit, they think 2 + 2 is 5. You know what I mean? Seriously, if you go to these schools, they're saying, hey, it's okay. 2 + 2 is 5. You're close enough. In the real world, 2 + 2 is 4. But in these schools in Oakland, or they're being taught that 5 is close enough. You round up. Oh, you're good at rounding up. And that's the thing. You can prove racism that way because in an Asian school, like in Cupertino, for those who don't know, is in the South Bay. That's where Apple's at. All them Asian kids are learning 2 + 2 is 4 and -2 + 2 is, 0. You know what I mean? Like they know this stuff. You know what I mean? So, and like they know this stuff, but we don't know this stuff. I can't say we, like I speak for all blacks, but the majority of black kids don't know how to add a negative number to a positive number. They just don't. Just basic subtraction. That's too complicated because they're not being taught that. They're being taught about sex ed. Why? Because they honestly believe they're going to need abortions by the time they're 12. I mean, seriously. I mean, I'm laughing and giggling, but man, I don't know what you saw in Oakland, but if you watch one of those abortion clinics, you'll see a lot of young chicks going in there, 12, 13, 14 years old. Yeah. It's insane. And why? Because they're pregnant. Why? Because they know about sex. And that's all they know. But again, like I said before, it's real easy and obvious to go after progressives because it's just simple. But the real root of it is because we went away from our conservative roots and we ignore the streets. You cannot be conservative unless, without knowing the streets, how can you say you're a conservative? How? You can't, because the streets is like the foundation of conservative principle. Jesus wasn't running around hanging out with kings and queens.
Right.
He wasn't. He was, showing people how to change, how to live, how to love yourself. You know what I mean? He really was doing that. He wasn't just because I'm still fascinated by how he changed an entire race of people or an ethnic group, the Samaritans. You know what I mean? They weren't killed off in war. He literally changed them into becoming that whole region. All of North Africa was a Christian area. It just became all of North Africa, which was known for all their crazy religions and gods. And, Egypt is obviously the most famous, but the Samaritans were worse than the Egyptians. But yet somehow, some way, that entire region became Christian. Well, right. Technically, the whole world became Christian.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? How did that happen? And I'm always fascinated with that. But basically, we know it's from the commandments he gave us. Love God as you love yourself, whatever they are. You know what I mean? But that's basically, it's not magic. I'm not reinventing the wheel. But that's the thing. Most modern Christians in 2020 that go to these, Catholic churches or the mega churches whoever like Benny Hinn, those people. But it's the I'm not dogging on them because I know they were taught the wrong way. It's just like I was taught the wrong way. I was taught to be an atheist. I was taught to only think logically, and not that religion was illogical, because it's the most logical book I ever read. And I love John Steinbeck, and John Steinbeck it's not an easy read, but anyway. But my point is this: Christian people honestly have not been taught the right way, because everything they see should always be from those lens of the commandments Jesus gave us. And as long as you don't need to know the scripture as much as a pastor does. Why? Because they're pastors. They went to school for that. They're experts. All we need to do And this goes against being like a conservative, but like we just have to be good sheep, like a part of a flock. Our pastor.
Yeah, our pastor guides us, but I mean, we can know what he knows because we have the Holy Ghost. You don't have to rely, but the shepherd is Jesus. The shepherd.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Because for those who don't know, like we have to trust in, like I trust in what you say. You know what I mean? When it comes to the Bible and the scripture.
Well, you trust in what the Bible says, because all I did was give you what was in the Bible.
Yeah, no. I know. Sure. I'm not good at this, but anyway, but you know what I'm saying. So, but my point is, but through that, I could use real science. I could use real math, like George Lemire, whatever. I always butcher his last name, but his math clearly shows how the universe is always expanding. There is no slowing down, because that's how and why it is described in the Bible.
Yeah,
because it's always the love that, or the light of God will always expand, and it's never ending. It is infinite, and it's hard for a lot of people to wrap their mind around it, because like, oh no, but in this, and it's like, yeah, but that's not, what happens here on Earth isn't what happens in unknown parts of the universe that we only know through the Bible, because I have no idea what the heavens are like. I don't know. I've never been there. And any person who says that they know, they're full of it, because they don't know. It's just a good guess. But the best guess, I'm only speaking scientifically, because I believe it, 100%. Like I literally believe everything in the Bible. It's just something I have not yet to prove through math or science. But that said, everything like in Genesis really is real. It is the most logical thing I have ever read, because the logic behind it explains perfectly how dangerous progressive ideology is. And you have a lot of conservatives saying, they're not that bad. But no, it's the most dangerous. If you honestly believe in Jesus, you have to believe this is how the devil operates, through sugarcoating everything. Just like how Darwin wrote it out in the quotes that, I read earlier, like, I don't know what hour that was, but you know what I mean? But it's just how it works. Like that is so wrong.
Yeah.
Because that's not, look, we can never let our guard down. We always got to be loving because seriously, how was, like, going back to the two ladies in Oakland, how was that loving yourself? How was accepting food stamps showing self-love? Sir, yeah. You're totally capable. If you're, I almost said retarded, but if you are retarded and you can't do anything, well, there you go. That's your excuse. Seriously, a developmentally disabled person cannot fend for themselves. That's our job, to take care of those people. Why? Because we are humane. That is how you love other people. We help those with no agenda. We help them. Helping a retard ain't going to help me anyway, but we're going to give him comfort and he'll be in, heaven and enjoy all the blessings that we all have. I don't know what goes through his mind because he's retarded, but, take him to the park or do whatever it is that, normal people do. Why can't they enjoy that? They can. They're supposed to. That's what we're supposed to do. So like when I say like we have to be sheep, it's in that way. Yeah, we are sheep. We're following Jesus, and that's what we have to do. So we have to humble ourselves a little bit and say, hey, look, we got to help the less fortunate, this and that. And that's how we show love towards others, by building them up. There's nothing wrong with building up other people. But when you believe like these two ladies in Oakland, I am owed this. That's when it's, you're not owed anything. Even if you work hard, you're not owed anything.
And that's where the Bible actually has an explicit work about, a verse about he who doesn't work doesn't eat. Like that's like a direct, I can't find it, and I might be misquoting here, but that's what you just talked about, in the last few minutes here, debunks everything about, socialism and just the aspects of shared things. Because here's the interesting thing about tying the taxation aspect into it, right? Like in a church, we are commanded to tithe, but we're not commanded to tithe in the sense of you are required to do this or you're out of here or it's by law. But it's what contributes to the upkeep of the church. It's what pays the pastor. It's actually what comes back around to help the widows and the poor and all those people that you were just talking about. But it comes from willful giving, from cheerful giving, right? Not because the church mandated, this law that you had to do so. And I feel like it's the same way with taxation, right? I feel like it's the same way with people who have more when they inform in their Christian beliefs and they're generous and gratitude. I feel like there's always more than enough that would go around that would help people, assuming we still stuck to those principles. Because one thing that I need to remark on, I know you talked, and I'm trying to tie it all together. This is the time where we start to synthesize everything. I mean, back in the 19th century, before progressivism took place, there wasn't a welfare state, right? And the church was solely responsible for taking care of the mentally ill and the handicapped, and even the war veterans. And like when you came back after the Civil War, you were screwed because you didn't have a veterans hospital. And you didn't have VA. You didn't have VA, and you couldn't really do anything like that. But yet America thrived. Here's the point I have to drive home. People forgot how hard or how well America actually thrived during the Reconstruction. Like we're talking the birth of industries. And from that whole period of 1870 to 1912 were ridiculous years of American prosperity.
No, exactly.
And it's like people, and you have to understand that the Civil War that freed the slaves between the Union and the Confederacy was a bloody war. Yet America actually pulled itself out of that. People worked hard. They went, and that's the amazing thing is what happened after Lincoln freed the slaves, or after the slaves were freed. They went back to work. That's it. They didn't depend on the government. They didn't depend on handouts and everything. And look at what America built in just 100 short years. Like I feel like we forget that. And this is like we talked about how progressive ideology and how the government, in terms of its scope, has gotten so large that people have depended on it. But we also forget that before you had a Federal Reserve, before you had an IRS, before you had Medicare, Medicaid, universal health care, whatnot, you just had people. You just had people that took care of each other. And it wasn't uncommon. And the church was also a cornerstone of most Americans' lives. We're talking back at that time period, most people actually identified as Christians, were professing Christians, you could say. And that's the thing, that the Baptist church, right, has become sort of the firmament, staple, where it sounds like it's the most prevalent in America because it was allowed to thrive. So I know some people are piecing out and everything because it's starting to get late. We're wrapping this up, guys.
No, because I like these comments. They're actually very good. I like the firmamentalist. No, seriously, I'm really looking into that Orthodox stuff. I like that. But here's because I don't know, it just went away for some reason. But somebody they brought up a pretty good point. Why do we have to prove anything? Like the existence of this or the existence of that and blah, 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 blah. It's real simple. If you really want to bring people to Jesus Christ, you really have to believe in that Bible. And the Bible is not a fairy tale. There is nothing in that Bible that is fake. Everything can be proved through science. We just don't understand it. But here's the thing. But that's just my ego. But now that I'm a Christian, I understand why God gave us the mind to prove the existence or anything in the Bible. I'll give you the perfect example, and we're going to go back to the first hour when we were talking about sodomy and all this other stuff. If it wasn't for science, we never would have known that sodomy was medically bad, because through sodomy we have things like VRE, which is vancomycin resistant enterococci, which is a parasite that lives inside your intestine. Science proved that. It doesn't say that. Where in the Bible does it say VRE is going to happen? Where does it say in the Bible that AIDS is going to happen? We have to prove this stuff. What about syphilis? Syphilis itself comes from a bacteria in your colon. That's all sodomy, but the Bible only says sodomy. But when we say things like syphilis, AIDS, HIV, VRE, which is something that people say, oh, that's from the, oh, you're at a hospital and the nurse didn't wash her hands. No, that's all BS. This is all biblical. This is why we have the Bible, because the Bible tells us what to research, what to study, not just study the word and be all like, oh, giving out freebies to this. No, because we're supposed to love ourselves. And part of loving ourselves is understanding why it's bad, because that's just, there's skepticism, right? Because you told me, I didn't read this, but Zach had told me about Peter cutting off that dude's ear and Jesus putting it, or whatever. I forgot.
Yeah, that's in one of the Gospels. I think he cuts off the ear, but the account where he puts it back might be in Luke. I might be mistaken, but yeah. Well, what about
the point? Is the reason for that story is because there is a way to do things, and just acting out violently or whatever, that's not the way to do it. You have to do things to help people. So if somebody is suffering from AIDS or VRE, you have to help them. You don't just kill them off or beat them. You like the way they do in Malaysia. In Malaysia, no, it's the truth. Like Indonesia and Malaysia, they're using Facebook and Google to hunt down gay people and publicly beat them until they turn straight, which is going to just make them more gay. You know what I mean? But it's the truth. You're going to beat the gay right into them. But that's not what we do. So if you honestly are a Christian, you don't condemn people. You got to help them. How are you going to help a guy with AIDS? By telling him, oh, repent and just go to heaven? No. You tell him, accept Christ, and through God's mercy, we understand how to fix you. But don't go ahead and get AIDS again. You got to, it's kind of like what you tell a drunk. You tell a drunk, you fix their liver, hey, stop drinking. Go to AA. It's the only thing that works. There's reasons why we have science. Science isn't some kind of voodoo magic stuff. No, it's biblical. God he gave us this information for a reason. But he also knows, because Adam and Eve were the perfect examples of people who, even though they knew God, they still sinned, right? They knew God. They were the first people to he came from God. Adam came from God. He made, through the dirt or whatever, but he literally experienced God. And even that dude was tempted by the devil. Seriously, how can a man who honestly knows God, like literally knows, like spoke to him, God was in Adam's ear. And even though the most powerful being that ever existed is in your ear, you're still going to sin. Are you kidding me? So God goes, you know what? I mean, I'm just paraphrasing, but in my mind, God, hey, look, Jesus has to come, and he's going to have to show everybody how to love themselves and how to love others. Keep it simple. Just like in business, you keep things simple, things work. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just keep it simple. McDonald's is successful because they kept it simple. They sold Big Macs. They didn't sell chicken wings.
That was like the biggest switch. You just went from talking about that to McDonald's. But
but people don't understand the simplicity of Jesus Christ can be applied to economic success. See, now progressives, all complicated. That stuff that I read from Darwin, that's some complicated stuff. Heavy-handed words. This wording, this wording, this wording, this wording. And all these things, it's just all BS. It's all nonsense. But Christianity is real basic, real simple. That's why when you read me Romans, it just clicked, light bulb went on. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And I'm thinking, why didn't anybody else show me this? It's just because I believe they have that NIV Bible. Because it's not in there. Did you know that? And the NIV Bible is not in there?
There's some stuff that's missing from an NIV, and I no longer use an NIV Bible. I use
a lot missing, not just a little bit. A lot is missing. A lot. But that means everything, because whenever people pull up a Bible, because I was one of those dudes, it's like, you guys are all hypocrites, da 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 da. But the NIV is not a real Bible. It's not. It's a fake Bible. I always no, but why do you think people think the Bible's fake? And because we've been allowing a fake Bible in our society for so gosh darn long, we have to prove it. Because shoot, if back in the old Jesus days when Jesus was with people and people were doubting Jesus then, right? Doubting Thomas doubted Jesus, and Jesus was right in front of him and he still doubted it.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's happening, what makes you think that 2,000 years later that we need proof? People are just naturally doubting people. I don't mind proving people that Jesus is real, because why not? The science is there, the math works out, the physics works out. Why not? I'm not afraid to do it. I might not know the scripture, but I know math and I know it's real. So, but that's why I was laughing at that guy's thing. Oh, so angry, but I'm not angry.
Just to clarify, Professor Dreg doesn't get mad. He just gets into it and he rambles for 20 minutes.
Sorry. No, but I mean, I know I shouldn't ramble.
But that's the thing is all of this stuff is tied. And I always feel like, the show kind of started off as a street conservative show last year, but the fact that you can tie everything in with everything else is encouraging. Because I mean, we're not really here to give our commentary on what's happening in politics or culture and whatnot, but really draw the connection between all those things. I will say this, it does take a critical mind to even just accept grace through faith in Jesus. It really does, because you have to understand what that means. And until you do it, it's not. Then it's just kind of like, oh, if you've got to go use the bathroom, that's cool.
No. Because what you said just reminded me of a story.
I didn't even read. I'm sorry. I'm reading a private chat. I'm getting a little delirious. We're like,
no. Okay, so let me tell the story real quick, because this is so but this is so Christian. There was this couple that couldn't have a baby, and they kept saying, "Oh, you got to pray, you got to pray, you got to pray, and you'll have a baby." So, and these people were raised in the church. I think they were Pentecostals, but they were raised in a Pentecostal church, and they do the touching, and then you start to walk, and so they were putting hands on her belly to get her pregnant, all this stuff. And because she didn't get pregnant, she became suicidal. But here's the thing: God has nothing to do with that. It just doesn't happen. There's, and to pray for a baby and then blame God for when you don't get pregnant, that's wrong. You know what I mean? Because that has nothing to do with Christianity. It just doesn't. If you're blessed with a child, that's great. But if you're blessed with not having a child, that's also great too, because there's a lot out there. But that's my point. My point of telling that story is you reminded me that how people are taught the wrong thing. That's just like, oh, I'm broke, I'm praying to become rich. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you can work as hard as you can, but guess what happens? A tornado happens and it blows away your house. You're going to get mad at God for that? That's my point. So when all of these Christian churches using the NIV Bible, I'm telling you, that's what it says in NIV. In the NIV Bible, it literally teaches you how to get rich, pray for babies, and because you just never know, because you know what I mean? And this, I know this is Old Testament, but it kind of says in the Old Testament about this thing about, being cursed for generations upon generations. But the medical facts behind it kind of is true. There's recessive genes. So if something happens and let's say you commit sodomy and there's a recessive gene that's been mutated with the bacteria from your gut, and that's part of your DNA, you could have a lot of issues in the future. And that's what regressive genes do. They just pop out randomly.
Mm-hmm.
So like my body, for example, my heart's all messed up, but it's because I have a condition that's really rare. Maybe 8 of me on the planet with this condition. And guess what? This is proof. That's somebody in my family history, my lineage messed up, in the eyes of God. They weren't supposed to do it. And now this gene exists in our lineage. So are we cursed? No, because I believe in Jesus. I'm going to go to heaven. But the science behind the genetic mutations is still there. And that's why, because why did genetic mutations happen? Because it is a sign of I don't want to say a curse, but it is a sign of something that we did that was wrong. Doesn't mean we're not going to go to heaven. It just means that, as long as you accept Christ, we all know we're going to go to heaven. But it doesn't mean that we can't work on the science to help alleviate some of the physical pains that happens when it manifests in a person.
And also we have to understand that, I don't want to get too deep into it, but just
we've only got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, the bad things happen to bad people, good things happen to good. That's usually the deal, is the unfortunate twisting of our gospel today, which is a false gospel in a lot of churches, is that it's word of faith and it's, blessings upon being faithful and whatnot, which is it's not scriptural in that sense. I mean, we are blessed for having faith, but that blessing manifests itself in eternal security and, being part of the body of Christ. But like, in terms of your life here on earth, here's the thing. We probably talked about a few things that will never, ever see the light of day on CNN, and people will probably get upset. But it's not in an antagonistic way. It's just because it's just not, it's wrong. It is unnatural. It is not natural to do these things. And I'm sorry, I'm starting to get a little tired, but
no worries.
We can talk. I just wanted to just, remark on that's the case. It's not your life's going to be all good when you choose to walk this walk. It's not. You're going to be given the truth. The truth isn't always convenient, but it is the truth, right? And unfortunately, the truth of a lot of things is that it's oftentimes it comes with a price. It's not easy to accept. And that's the thing, is a lot of these people are out there searching for truth and whatnot. And one thing I always tell people is that the truth has always been there all along. It's been there since the beginning, right? In fact, it'll be here. The word of God will be the same yesterday, today, and forever. But truth has always been around us. It's just always been hard to embrace. That's a fact. It's not that you need to find truth. It's just that the truth that you were looking for wasn't sufficient enough for you, so you had to make truth for yourself. And the Bible says that clearly. It was very clear that there'll come a time where people will fashion God in their own image. Call it Jesus, but the Jesus you pray to is not the Jesus of the Bible.
No, but it's the and that's what. Yeah, you're right. I love it.
Carnal in its regard, and if you look at some of these churches, right? I left a non-denominational church that was a little bit more all-inclusive. That's a word I'll leave it. And unfortunately, with the consequence for that is a watered-down gospel. And there's not a lot of spiritual discernment that's also going on. And I think even worse than that, not a lot of sound doctrine that's being preached. And like I said, the thing is, the truth is not hard to find. People are lost and they're looking for truth. The truth has been there since the very beginning, but it's hard to accept, or it's hard to embrace, right? I mean,
exactly.
With you, it was. I remember this. The last thing I'll leave people is like, it's a really good testimony with you, because like at first you were just like, I can't take this on. I mean, you understood it, but you couldn't accept it at first, and then
because I thought it was like nonsense. Seriously, it was all nonsense. To me, it was all nonsense. But again, I'm arrogant. Like TW saying GMO food is playing God, and I'm thinking, no, it's not. GMO, but why? Because I'm arrogant that way. But technically, it's not playing God. Like science is not playing God. It's God revealing Himself to us. Because GMO, what's a GMO? Genetically modified. That happens naturally in nature. Antibiotics, discovered by the Kellogg Scripps program at UC San Diego. The research that's coming out of there, they have seen genetic modification that happens natural. And just because they could replicate that doesn't mean they're playing God. They're spreading the love of God and nature by having the ability to replicate that. So is it genetically modified? Well, of course. Can we modify corn so it can grow in Africa where, food can't be grown? Well, of course. But that's why, with Christianity, that's the point. When you honestly accept God and everything that encompasses God, all of the mysteries of the universe become unlocked. It's that easy. It is that simple. And if everybody just accepted it, we would live in paradise. We would live in heaven. I believe that with all my heart, but I'm not afraid of science. I don't believe GMOs or this or that. It's just not. It's just us understanding nature.
Well, also in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, like they will sort of replicate after their kind is part of that. Because one thing to talk about is, it's like crossbreeding, right? Like, and races or even different breeds of dogs that breed with other people. Genetically modified food, as we define it, is making food so that it's more resilient to gosh, I can't even think right now, to rodents.
Yeah, bugs. Well, technically, what's that company? Monsanto made it so it's so Roundup can kill the bugs and not and like seriously, like they modified it in a way where only Roundup can kill the bugs and save the seeds. but, I mean, you can't hate a dude for doing that. You know what I mean? It's like if you're smart enough to do something like that, But yeah, that's funny.
Gonna read a quick super chat here. Tora Helms, thank you for your donation.
Yeah, that's nice.
Hi, Zach. Welcome back. Thank you. Thank you for supporting the show. Back with my co-host, who's now someone.
Deborah Barry said, "Hi, guys." That's cool. But like all these people that's cool. Coolers 20, 711, Lucas, all these. That's cool. That's nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. We're gonna wrap up here, but we got 5 more minutes, man. This is classic me, but do you have any final thoughts when it comes down to what we taught? We covered a lot. I think we just
I got no final thoughts other than I look forward to doing this. I really do, because I write a lot. Well, now I'm writing stuff on Minds or whatever, so it's like
you have a link to your Minds that you want me to post in the chat so people can check it out?
Maybe next time, not now. I mean, next time.
That works one step at a time. This was a great way to kind of bring things back a little bit and keep things long so we can actually exhaust and fully talk about topics without cutting them short. And then I would obviously just break this up, put them up as clips on the American Made in Paid channel. You guys subscribe to the American Made in Paid channel if you haven't done so already. Let me leave a link. Because what's going to happen, real quick announcement here before we wrap things up, is this is going to be eventually live exclusively on that channel. So subscribe to this channel because I will be putting it live there. Like, for example, let me see here. Subscribe to that channel for AMAP. So this was.
I like reading I really do. I like the. I don't know why I like negative comments, but some of the comments are pretty good. Like I always say this to everybody: GMOs are nothing more than like mass-produced medicines. I don't agree with all medicines like chemotherapy and radiation. I know that's bad, but there's other things like I'm a little dated with my medical knowledge, but back in the old days and like in the 90s, there was something like it was brand new. It was called RNAi therapy. And that was all new. And stuff like that. That's genetically modified medicine. And it helps the body turn on the immune system that we had and shut it off by eating junk processed foods. I mean, I don't care what restaurant you go to, but if you go out to eat restaurants and stuff like that, it's all genetically modified. Because
it's true. Your tomato that you buy in the supermarket does not look that pretty in real life. Like the real version of a tomato is not. But anyways, I want to address one more super chat here. Brandon Eatsmith says, rest well. Thank you, Brandon, for your $5 donation. Thank you for supporting the show, guys. Hey, hit that like button on your way out. We're going to wrap up here because I know it's getting late for some folks. And yes, to answer some of your questions, this is going to be an interactive show where we get to actually invite people on too. So it's going to be interactive. I don't know if we should have a call-in system. I'm still working on that, but this is a nice way to kind of break the new year in a different format. Because if you guys haven't subscribed to the American Made and Page show yet, go and check out the American Made and Page show here on Podbean, which is really important. That's where we've done over 100 episodes. We did 110 episodes last year alone. So, this is us kind of coming back after like 2 months. A lot of you all have been asking about it. So we're back. And, real quick, final announcements. We'll do Thursday nights. Show starts at 6 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. We'll go for 3 hours. You guys can dive in, dive out whenever you want. And, we'll go from there. But other than that, I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in to the American Made and Page show, for listening to us. Yes, you can find it on Spotify. If you type in American Made and Paid, it is on Spotify. It's on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. I believe it's also on TuneIn Radio. You can find it. You won't find it on SoundCloud, but you'll find this, and now on YouTube as well on the other channel. So yeah, I need to find a way to, we took a break for a while to get reorganized, but this is a great system. I'm glad that we have StreamYard. Isn't this convenient? This is fantastic.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
And it keeps you more entertained, because at least if anything, you can just read through the comments. But I hope to have more of you guys tuning into the show. Thank you guys for listening. Can't believe we talked for like 3 hours. I felt like, the nice thing about talking with Professor Dreg is that we don't really run out of things to talk about. It's just that we get tired of talking and then we have to call it a night. But that's about it, guys. I really appreciate you guys tuning into the American Made and Page show. It's 10 p.m. here where I'm at, 9 o'clock your time. We will see you guys next Thursday, same time, hopefully at this time. And then we'll all talk soon. Thank you for being a part of this. All right. Take care, guys.